Hi, I'm Amelia, a 31-year-old new mother, navigating the beautiful yet overwhelming world of parenthood. Those first days at home with my newborn son were a blur of pure joy and utter exhaustion. While he filled our lives with happiness, the physical toll of childbirth was more challenging than I had expected. The house was in chaos, laundry was stacked up, and the dishes never seemed to leave the sink. One afternoon, as I was desperately trying to calm my crying baby, the doorbell rang. It was Linda, my mother-in-law, dropping by unannounced. Her eyes quickly scanned the cluttered living room, and I could sense a mix of concern and disapproval settle on her face. "I thought I'd stop by to see how you're managing, dear," Linda said, stepping over a stray baby toy. "Tom mentioned you might need some help." "Thanks, Linda. Things are a bit hectic, but we're managing," I said, doing my best to hide the strain in my voice. Linda moved into the kitchen, where the clatter of dirty dishes seemed to echo my stress. "It looks like you need more than just a little help," she said, her tone sharp. "This place is a mess. Is this how you plan to raise my grandson?" Her words cut deep, and the weight of her judgment pressed heavily on my already fragile spirit. "I'm doing the best I can," I replied defensively, clutching my son a bit tighter. Linda let out a long sigh. "Amelia, being a mother is about getting your priorities straight. Right now, it seems like you haven't prioritized anything at all." I felt anger rising, ready to respond. When Tom walked in and sensed the tension, he immediately tried to defuse the situation. "Mom, Amelia is doing an amazing job. It's been really tough with the baby not sleeping well," he said, stepping in to defend me. But instead of backing down, Linda turned to him with a cold gaze. "You need to help her understand what's at stake, Tom. It's not just about cleaning up the house. It's about responsibility. She's not living up to the family standards." Tom looked between me and his mother, clearly torn. "Mom, please, let's not do this now. Amelia is recovering, and—" "That's exactly why she needs discipline now," Linda interrupted, her voice rising. "If she learns it now, she'll manage better in the future. You can't be soft on her, Tom." For a moment, he hesitated. Then, in a voice that sounded foreign even to him, Tom said, "Maybe you're right, Mom. Maybe Amelia needs to learn the hard way." "Exactly," Linda nodded, pushing him gently but firmly toward me. "Show her that this behavior won't be tolerated." I barely had time to register what was happening before Tom's hand struck my cheek. The sharp crack echoed through the room, a horrifying sound that marked the line that had just been crossed. I held our son close, his cries blending with the pounding of my heart. "Tom, what are you doing?" I choked out through the tears, the sting of the slap far less painful than the betrayal that accompanied it. "This is for your own good, Amelia. You need to learn," Tom said, his voice hollow, eyes refusing to meet mine. The room fell silent, save for the soft whimpers of our son. Tom glanced at me, his face betraying a mixture of frustration and regret, but the damage had already been done. Linda stood firm, her expression unreadable, yet her presence unwavering in its silent approval. What should have been a supportive visit had morphed into a brutal attack on my worth as a mother and as a person. As Linda prepared to leave, she whispered something to Tom at the door. I couldn't catch it, but his troubled expression told me it wasn't words of comfort. That night, as I rocked my son to sleep, the dread that had settled over me felt suffocating. What was supposed to be a supportive family structure felt more like a tribunal, with me as the defendant on trial. As I soothed both my son and my stinging cheek, clarity began to form. This couldn't go on. Something had to change. The chaos was overwhelming, and I knew I needed a plan, a way out, not just for my safety, but for the well-being of my little boy. The house that once felt like a home now felt like a trap, set by the very people who were supposed to love and protect us. The night after Tom slapped me, manipulated by his mother Linda, I couldn't bring myself to sleep next to him. With my baby in my arms, I retreated to the nursery, the only place that had been a refuge for us in recent weeks. As I rocked my son to sleep, the events of the day played on a loop in my mind, each pass sharpening the pain and betrayal. I knew I couldn't stay. The next morning, while Tom was at work and Linda was likely in her own world, I made the call. Jessica answered on the second ring. "Jess, it's me." "I need that help you offered," I said, my voice wavering between fear and determination. "Say no more, Amelia. I'll be there today with my truck. We can store your things at my place until you figure out what's next." Jessica replied, her voice steady and reassuring. The plan was simple, but it came with risks. I would pack what I could during the day, just the essentials for my son and me. Jessica would help me move everything in the evening, before Tom came home from work. I knew I couldn't face him. If I did, he might sway me with apologies or, worse, Linda might influence him again. As I packed, every tiny outfit and baby toy felt weighted with memories and what-ifs. But the echo of Tom's slap and the cold, calculating look in Linda's eyes were all the reminders I needed that staying was no longer an option. By late afternoon, most of our things were boxed up and stashed in the garage. Just as the sun began to dip, Jessica arrived, her presence a beacon of hope in one of the darkest moments of my life. "Ready?" she asked, taking in the scene, my life reduced to boxes and bags. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, my heart heavy but resolute. Holding my son a little tighter. We worked quickly, loading the truck with the efficiency and speed of a well-practiced team. The nursery, my sanctuary, was the last room I cleared. I took a moment there, a silent goodbye to the life I had once dreamed of building with Tom. As we drove away, I watched the house shrink in the rearview mirror, a chapter closing with a heavy yet hopeful heart. My baby slept peacefully in his seat, unaware of the change, but finally safe. This was the first night of our new life, one where fear and manipulation no longer had any place. Safe at Jessica's, the contrast between the peace I found there and the oppressive atmosphere of my own home only strengthened my resolve. It wasn't just about escaping. It was about making sure that Tom and Linda couldn't twist the narrative, couldn't hurt anyone else the way they had hurt me. I began planning, not just for my safety, but to expose the truth. I reached out to family and friends under the guise of catching up, subtly recording our conversations whenever Linda or Tom's behavior came up. Some were hesitant to speak openly, but many hadn't realized the extent of Linda's manipulation or Tom's submission to her. Over the next few weeks, I collected text messages, voicemails, and recorded calls, each piece building a clearer picture of their control. The most damning piece of evidence came when I managed to capture a video of Linda coaching Tom on how to handle me, using words that revealed her true intentions. This was about control, not concern. With everything in place, I chose the perfect moment for confrontation, a family gathering hosted by Tom's sister for her anniversary. It was a neutral space with enough family members present, some of whom had already quietly expressed discomfort with Linda's dominance in the family dynamics. On the day of the gathering, my nerves were stretched taut. I arrived with Jessica by my side, her presence a source of strength as I prepared to face them. The murmurs of greeting were distant and uneasy. Everyone could sense the tension. Tom and Linda's recent domestic issues had rippled through the family, leaving a quiet unease even among the most distant relatives. After the initial pleasantries, I knew the time was coming. I stood up, my hands trembling, but my voice steady. "I have something important to share with all of you today," I began, feeling every eye in the room lock onto me. "It's about Tom and his mother, Linda, and how their actions have not only affected me and my son, but the entire family." Tom, looking shocked and a bit panicked, tried to cut me off. "Amelia, let's not do this here," he said, his voice strained. But I pressed forward, pulling out my phone. "This is not just a personal matter," I said as I connected my phone to the Bluetooth speaker. The room grew silent, thick with tension, as the recordings played. Linda's sharp commands, Tom's hesitant compliance, and their plotting to correct my behavior echoed through the room. The reactions around me shifted from surprise to disgust. Tom's aunt, who had always been kind to me, looked especially betrayed. "Is this true, Linda? Were you forcing Tom to do these things?" she demanded. Linda's face contorted with fury and panic as she tried to deflect. "These are taken out of context," she snapped, but her words sounded hollow. Then Tom's cousin, who had been quiet until now, stood up. "No, they're not. We've seen hints of this for years. We just didn't want to believe it." That simple statement shifted everything. The tide turned, and relatives began to share their own observations, their own experiences. Piece by piece, they revealed the portrait of a woman who had manipulated her family for years, hiding behind the guise of a concerned matriarch. Tom sat there, pale and silent, finally realizing the extent of the web his mother had woven around him. As the family meeting dissolved into a heated discussion about Linda's influence, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The truth was out, not just for me, but for everyone to see. When a storm of confrontation finally calmed, the room was left with a somber realization. Tom's family, long under Linda's sway, now saw her manipulations for what they truly were. The collective shock was palpable, and the discomfort in the room was undeniable as everyone began to process just how deeply Linda's control had burrowed into their lives. For me, the decision to leave Tom, though painful, was necessary. As the family gathering slowly dispersed, I felt the finality of my choice settle in. I gathered my son, who remained blissfully unaware of the turmoil that had just unfolded. With one last look at the family home, I turned and walked away, knowing that this chapter had finally come to an end. I stepped into the unknown, feeling both a sense of loss and a growing resolve. Tom watched us leave, a mixture of sorrow and resignation in his eyes. His voice, once so familiar, now seemed like a distant echo as he whispered a weak goodbye. Linda, on the other hand, faced a much harsher reality. The family she had so tightly controlled had turned their backs on her, each member grappling with feelings of betrayal and misplaced trust. The blame for the family's unraveling rested squarely on her shoulders. Her attempts to regain control fell on deaf ears. Too much had been revealed, and the collective testimony at the gathering was impossible to ignore. In the weeks that followed, Tom reached out, his messages a mix of apologies, pleas for understanding, and promises of change. But the memory of his hand raised against me, the echo of Linda's influence guiding his actions, were barriers too high to overcome. The trust between us was shattered, and with it, the foundation of our marriage. I found refuge in a small apartment, far from the neighborhood I once called home. It was a place where no one knew my story, a place where I could start over. Jessica remained my rock, helping me navigate this new phase of life. My days became filled with the simple routines of caring for my son and rebuilding a world free from the shadows of the past. The healing process was slow and often painful. There were days when the weight of everything that had happened threatened to overwhelm me, but the freedom to make choices without fear of manipulation or abuse was a powerful motivator. I started therapy, joined support groups for single mothers, and gradually, the pieces of my old self began to come back together, forming someone stronger, more resilient. My son's laughter became my anchor, and his milestones, first steps, first words, were beacons of hope, guiding me forward. As he grew, so did my confidence in our future. I was building a life on my terms, and slowly the pain of the past began to lose its grip. Months turned into a year, and one evening, as I put my son to bed in our cozy living room, filled with his drawings and toys, I reflected on the journey. The pain of the past was still there, but it was now a faint shadow, dwarfed by the light of new beginnings. The support of friends and the unconditional love of my son had woven a safety net strong enough to catch me on the days I faltered. Sitting down with a cup of tea, I felt ready to share my story. I started a blog, a space where I could speak openly about my experiences, connect with others who might be fighting their own battles against manipulation and abuse. Each post was a step away from the victim I had been and a step closer to the advocate I was becoming. As my story of resilience and courage comes to a close, I want to leave you with a question. Do you believe it's possible to fully break free from manipulative family dynamics, or do the shadows of such relationships linger in our lives forever? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments. I would love to hear your perspective.
The envelope sat on my kitchen counter like a ticking bomb. No return address, just my name written in neat block letters. I'd found it mixed in with the usual bills and junk mail, but something about it made my stomach clench. My name is Margot, and until that moment, I thought I had everything figured out. Successful furniture business, beautiful 5-year-old twin daughters, and a husband who, despite his occasional moodiness, seemed devoted to our family. Funny how one piece of paper can shatter your whole reality. I waited until Sophie and Lily were absorbed in their afternoon cartoons before opening it. My hands trembled slightly as I slid my finger under the flap. A single photograph fell onto the counter, face down. There was a note too, typed in plain text, "Thought you should know what your husband does on his business trips to Chicago." The photo showed Liam sitting at a dimly lit restaurant, leaning close to a woman I'd never seen before. Her hand rested on his arm, fingers curled intimately around his wrist. The timestamp in the corner was from 3 weeks ago, when he'd told me he was closing a major real estate deal. Mommy, can we have apple slices? Sophie's voice made me jump. I quickly stuffed the photo and note back into the envelope, forcing a smile. Of course, sweetie. Go back to watching TV with your sister. I'll bring them in a minute. My phone buzzed, speaking of the devil. Liam's text read, stuck in traffic. Don't wait up for dinner. I stared at his message, remembering how he'd been stuck in traffic a lot lately. The signs had been there, late nights at the office, mysterious phone calls he'd take outside, the way he'd grown distant over the past few months. I'd brushed it all off, telling myself I was being paranoid. The girls' laughter drifted in from the living room, and my chest tightened. They were too young to understand why Daddy wasn't home for dinner again. Too innocent to know that their perfect little world might be built on lies. I pulled out my phone again, fingers hovering over Zoe's number. My best friend would tell me to confront him immediately, demand answers. But something held me back. If Liam was hiding this, what else didn't I know? The doorbell rang, making me flinch. Through the peephole, I saw Helen, my mother-in-law, standing there with her usual rigid posture. Perfect timing, as always. Margot, dear, she said as I opened the door, air kissing my cheek. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by to see my granddaughters. Her eyes swept past me, searching the house. Is Liam home? Traffic, I said shortly, watching her face for any reaction. Did she know? Had she always known? Again? She clicked her tongue. That boy works too hard. But then, the Donovan men have always been dedicated providers. She paused, giving me that familiar look. Speaking of Donovans, have you and Liam given any thought to trying again? For a boy this time? I felt the envelope burning a hole in my back pocket. Actually, Helen, now isn't a good time. The girls need their dinner, and I have some work to finish. She pressed her lips together, clearly disappointed. Of course, dear. Just remember, the Donovan name needs to be carried on. Yes, I know. I closed the door perhaps a bit too firmly, leaning against it as her footsteps faded away. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Liam, love you. Kiss the girls goodnight for me. I didn't reply. Instead, I pulled out the photograph again, studying the woman's face. She was younger than me, probably late 20s, with an artistic vibe about her. Everything I wasn't. The sound of small feet padding into the kitchen snapped me back to reality. Mommy? Lily called. Where are our apple slices? I tucked the envelope away, my mind already forming a plan. Coming, sweetheart. Mommy just needs to make a few calls first. I waited up for Liam that night, the envelope burning a hole in my pocket as I sat in our darkened kitchen. The twins were finally asleep after 3 bedtime stories and countless questions about why Daddy missed dinner again. The clock on the microwave read 11:43 when I heard his key in the door. You're still up. He smiled that easy smile that used to make my heart flutter. Now it just made my stomach turn. I thought I told you not to wait. We need to talk. I pulled out the envelope and placed it on the counter between us. His expression didn't change as he loosened his tie. Can it wait until morning? I'm exhausted. No, it can't. I slid the photograph across the granite countertop. Who is she, Liam? He barely glanced at it. A client. Where did you get this? A client who holds your wrist like that? My voice cracked slightly. Don't insult my intelligence. Liam ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd once found endearing. You're being paranoid, Margot. It was a business dinner. Riley's an interior designer I'm working with on the Chicago project. Riley. He'd given her a name without meaning to. I filed that away. The same project that was supposed to close 3 weeks ago? I watched his face carefully. The one you said was finished? Things got complicated. He moved toward the refrigerator, his back to me. You know how these deals are. Sometimes they take longer than expected. The casual way he lied made me wonder how many other lies I'd swallowed over the years. Helen stopped by today. His shoulders tensed. What did my mother want? The usual. Wondering when we're going to try for her precious grandson. I laughed, but it came out hollow. Funny timing, don't you think? He turned around, his expression hardening. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just wondering if maybe you've found someone else to give her what she wants. Jesus, Margot. He slammed the refrigerator door. You're turning a business dinner into some kind of soap opera. Is this because I've been working late? Because I'm trying to provide for our family? Are you providing for another family too? The words hung in the air between us. Something flickered across his face, guilt? Fear? Before he masked it with anger. I'm not having this conversation. He grabbed his keys. You're clearly not thinking straight. Where are you going? To a hotel. Call me when you're ready to be rational. I followed him to the front door. The girls will ask where you are in the morning. He paused, hand on the doorknob. Tell them. Tell them Daddy had an early meeting. Another lie to add to the pile? He didn't answer, just walked out into the night. I watched through the window as his car disappeared down our quiet suburban street. My phone buzzed. A text from Zoe, everything okay? You've been quiet all day. I started typing, deleted it, started again. How do you tell your best friend your marriage might be imploding? Before I could decide, another text came through from an unknown number. Ask him about the money. A friend. My hands shook as I read it twice, 3 times. The money? What money? Upstairs, I heard small footsteps. Mommy? Sophie stood at the top of the stairs in her unicorn pajamas, clutching her stuffed rabbit. I heard voices. Where's Daddy? I climbed the stairs and scooped her up, breathing in her sweet, clean scent. Daddy had to go to work early, sweetheart. Let's get you back to bed. But it's nighttime, she mumbled against my shoulder. I know, baby. I know. After tucking her back in beside her sleeping sister, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. If Liam was hiding something about money, there would be a trail. I just had to find it. The anonymous texter was right about one thing: this wasn't just about the woman in the photo. Something bigger was going on, and I was done being the trusting wife who looked the other way. 3 days of digging through bank statements and credit card bills left me with a migraine and a horrifying discovery. Our joint savings account, which should have held over $200,000, was nearly empty. The money had been bleeding out slowly over the past year, $5,000 here, $10,000 there, always in cash withdrawals. I was staring at the statements spread across my home office desk when Zoe walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. The girls are watching Frozen for the millionth time, she said, setting a cup beside me. Now, what's so urgent that I had to come over at 8 in the morning? I wordlessly pushed the bank statements toward her. Her eyes widened as she scanned the numbers. Holy shit, Margot. Where's all this money going? I don't know. My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. But look at the pattern. The withdrawals always happen within days of his business trips to Chicago. Zoe sat down heavily. Have you confronted him? He came home last night, grabbed some clothes, and left again. Says he needs space until I calm down about the photo. I laughed bitterly. He doesn't know I've found this yet. My phone buzzed, another text from the unknown number. Check the safe in his office. Code is his mother's birthday. Who keeps texting you? Zoe peered at my phone. I don't know, but they've been right so far. I stood up. Watch the girls? I need to check something. Liam's home office was immaculate, as always. The safe was hidden behind a framed photo of our wedding day. My hands shook as I entered Helen's birthday, 0-6-1-9-6-3. The safe clicked open. Inside, I found a stack of papers that made my blood run cold. Loan agreements from places I'd never heard of. IOUs. A letter from something called Golden Palace Casino warning about outstanding debts. Find anything? Zoe appeared in the doorway. He's gambling. The papers trembled in my hands. He's gambling away our savings, Zoe. The girls' college fund. The doorbell rang, making us both jump. Through the office window, I saw Helen's Mercedes in our driveway. Perfect timing, Zoe muttered. I shoved the papers back into the safe and hurried downstairs. Helen stood on our doorstep, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen her. Where is he? She demanded, pushing past me into the house. He's not here. What's wrong? Don't play dumb, Margot. George got a call from the bank this morning. Liam tried to take out a loan against their house. Their house? Her voice rose hysterically. What has he done? The twins appeared in the living room doorway, drawn by the commotion. Zoe quickly shepherded them back to their movie. Helen, I think you should sit down. I will not sit down. This is your fault. If you'd given him a son like I asked, he wouldn't be acting out like this. Something snapped inside me. Acting out? Your precious son has gambled away our savings and is trying to steal from his own parents. But sure, blame me for not producing a male heir. Helen's face went white. You're lying. I stormed to the office and returned with the papers from the safe, throwing them on the coffee table. Am I? As Helen sank onto the couch, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Liam. We need to talk. Meeting Riley for lunch at Marino's. Come if you want the truth. My hands clenched around the phone. Riley. The woman from the photo. He was actually asking me to meet his mistress? What is it? Zoe asked, returning from checking on the girls. He wants me to meet him. And her. I looked at Helen, still staring shell-shocked at the evidence of her son's deception. You know what? I think I will. Margot, wait, Zoe started. No. I'm done waiting. I grabbed my keys. Stay with the girls? This won't take long. As I drove toward Marino's, another text came through from my anonymous informant. Be careful. There's more at stake than you know. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Whatever truth waited for me at that restaurant, I was ready for it. Or at least, I thought I was. Marino's was packed with the lunch crowd when I arrived. I spotted them immediately, Liam and the woman from the photo, sitting at a corner booth. She was even prettier in person, with an artistic flair that made my designer clothes feel suddenly stuffy and conventional. Riley stood as I approached, extending her hand. You must be Margot. I'm so sorry we're meeting like this. Her sincerity caught me off guard. I'd expected smugness or hostility, not this gentle awkwardness. Sit down, please, Liam said, his voice strained. We need to explain. Explain what? The gambling or the affair? I kept my voice low, conscious of nearby diners. Or maybe how you tried to take out a loan against your parents' house? Riley's head snapped toward Liam. What? You said the money was for our gallery. Our gallery. The words hit me like a slap. It is, Liam insisted, reaching for her hand. Margot, you don't understand. Riley and I have been planning to open an art gallery, she finished, pulling her hand away from his. With the investment money he promised. I laughed, the sound harsh and foreign. Investment money? Is that what he called it? Liam said he was investing his own money, Riley said slowly. From his real estate deals. There are no real estate deals. I pulled out the casino documents, sliding them across the table. Just gambling debts and empty accounts. Riley's face went pale as she read. These dates. This is when you said you were meeting investors in Chicago. I can explain everything, Liam started, but his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his face went ashen. What now? I demanded. Nothing. Just work. He shoved the phone in his pocket, but not before I caught a glimpse of the text, payment due today or we go to the police. Show me the phone, Liam. This is ridiculous. I came here to explain about Riley, not to. The phone. My voice was steel. Now. A tense moment passed before he handed it over. The text was from someone named Marcus, last chance. Payment due today or we go to the police about the forged documents. What forged documents? Riley asked. Liam put his head in his hands. The loan applications. I used Dad's signature. The pieces clicked into place. That's why Helen came over. The bank called them about a loan they never applied for. I was desperate, Liam said. The casino was threatening to expose everything. I just needed time to make it right. By stealing from your parents? From our daughter's future? Riley stood abruptly, gathering her things. I can't. I need to go. Riley, wait, Liam reached for her, but she jerked away. Don't contact me again. She turned to me. I'm so sorry, Margot. I had no idea. After she left, Liam seemed to deflate. I love her, he said quietly. I know that's not what you want to hear, but... Stop. I held up my hand. The only thing I want to hear is how you plan to fix this before our daughters lose everything. I have a plan. A real estate deal that could. More lies? I stood up. You need help, Liam. Professional help. But I won't let you drag us down with you. My phone buzzed, another text from the unknown number. Check your business accounts. Now. Cold dread washed over me as I opened my banking app. The furniture business account was empty. Every penny gone. What did you do? I whispered, showing him the screen. I was going to pay it back, he said desperately. Just give me one more chance. I walked out of Marino's without looking back, my mind racing. The business account had held nearly $500,000, money for payroll, vendors, operating costs. Money that wasn't just mine to lose. In my car, I sat gripping the steering wheel, trying to steady my breathing. My phone buzzed one final time. Now you know everything. What are you going to do about it? What indeed? I hadn't expected to find George Donovan sitting alone on my front porch when I got home. He looked older than I remembered, shoulders hunched under his worn blazer. Unlike Helen's dramatic entrance earlier, his quiet presence felt more ominous. The girls are napping, Zoe said when I walked in. Helen left about an hour ago. She was upset. Her husband's outside. Zoe peered through the window. Want me to stay? I shook my head. I need to handle this. George didn't look up as I sat beside him on the porch steps. We sat in silence until he finally spoke. I knew about the gambling, he said quietly. Years ago, before he met you. Had to bail him out twice in college. My hands clenched in my lap. Why didn't you warn me? He promised he'd changed. And Helen. He sighed heavily. Helen wanted the marriage so badly. A proper daughter-in-law from a good family, someone to carry on the Donovan name. I was just a breeding mare to her, wasn't I? Helen's always been traditional. When you had girls instead of boys. He trailed off, looking ashamed. My phone buzzed. A text from my business partner, emergency meeting tomorrow. Vendors threatening legal action over bounced checks. He took everything, George. Not just your money or our savings. My business account too. George pulled an envelope from his jacket. Helen doesn't know I'm here. This is everything we have left in our retirement fund. About 50,000. I stared at the envelope. I can't take that. It's not for you. His voice cracked. It's for my granddaughters. Helen. She'll never admit it, but she loves those girls. Even if they're not the grandsons she wanted. Before I could respond, Helen's Mercedes screeched into the driveway. She stormed up the path, face contorted with rage. How dare you, she shouted at George. I checked the account. You withdrew everything. Helen, please. No. She turned on me. This is your fault. You drove him to this with your career and your independence. A proper wife knows her place. The front door creaked open. Sophie and Lily stood there in their matching pajamas, eyes wide with fear. Mommy? Lily's voice trembled. Why is everyone yelling? Girls, go back inside with Aunt Zoe, I said firmly, but Helen wasn't finished. You see? You can't even control your own children. No wonder Liam needed to find comfort elsewhere. Something snapped inside me. Enough. I stepped between Helen and the girls. You want to know why your precious son gambled away everything? Why he forged George's signature and emptied my business account? Because he's just like you, desperate to maintain an image that isn't real. How dare? No, how dare you come to my house and scream in front of my children? Your son stole from everyone who loved him, but somehow I'm to blame because I didn't give him a son? George stood up. Helen, we should go. Not without that money. It's gone, he said quietly. I gave it to Margot for the girls. Helen's face went white. You what? They're our grandchildren, Helen. Our only grandchildren. I want nothing to do with any of you, Helen spat, storming back to her car. George, are you coming? He hesitated, looking between his wife and his granddaughters. Something in his expression made my heart ache. Go, I said softly. But the girls' door will always be open for you. After they left, I found Zoe comforting the twins in the living room. Sophie looked up at me with Liam's eyes. Is Daddy in trouble? She asked. I sat down, pulling both girls onto my lap. Yes, sweetheart. But I promise, I'm going to fix everything. My phone buzzed again, the anonymous texter, there's one more thing you need to know. Check your email. Looking at my daughter's worried faces, I realized revenge wasn't enough anymore. I needed to protect what mattered most, no matter the cost. Zoe, I said, can you watch them a bit longer? There's something I need to do. The email from my anonymous informant contained a video. Security camera footage from the Golden Palace Casino, dated 3 months ago. I watched as Liam sat at a high-stakes poker table, Riley beside him, both laughing as he pushed stacks of chips forward. My business account chips, I realized with growing nausea. But it was the next clip that stopped my breath. Liam in a heated argument with a man in an expensive suit, Riley trying to pull him away. The timestamp matched the night of our daughter's 5th birthday party, the party he'd missed because of a work emergency. My phone rang. Riley's number. I need to see you, she said without preamble. There's something you should know. We met at a small coffee shop across town. Riley looked different, harder somehow, her artistic whimsy replaced by something darker. I'm pregnant, she said as soon as I sat down. And before you say anything, I didn't know about you or the girls when it started. I swear. The world tilted sideways. How far along? 4 months. She pushed a folder across the table. But that's not why I called. These are copies of everything, the loans, the gambling debts, the threats. I've been keeping records. Why? Because I realized he was playing us both. The gallery was never real, it was just a way to explain where the money was going. She laughed bitterly. I thought I was helping him invest in our future. Instead, I was helping him launder money from your business. My phone buzzed. A text from Zoe, "Where are you?" "Liam's here. He's drunk and demanding to see the girls." "I have to go," I stood up quickly. "My daughters." "There's one more thing." Riley grabbed my arm. "The man from the casino? He's coming for his money tonight. All of it." I rushed home to find Liam on my front lawn, shouting at my locked door while Zoe tried to reason with him. "Where are my daughters?" he slurred when he saw me. "Safe. Away from you." I'd asked my parents to take them for the night, thank God. "You can't keep them from me. I'm their father." "The father who stole their college fund for poker chips?" I held up my phone, showing the casino footage. "Or the father who missed their birthday to get in deeper with loan sharks?" He lunged for my phone, but Zoe stepped between us. "Leave, Liam, before I call the police." "Go ahead." He spread his arms wide, laughing manically. "Call them. Tell them how she's keeping my children from me. Tell them." A black SUV pulled up, and two men in suits stepped out. My blood ran cold as I recognized one from the casino video. "Mr. Donovan," the larger man said smoothly. "We need to discuss payment." Liam's face went ash white. "Marcus, please. I just need more time." "Time's up." Marcus nodded to his companion, who opened the SUV's back door. "Either we get our money now, or we take a ride to discuss alternatives." "I can get it," Liam said desperately. "Margot, the retirement money your father-in-law gave you." "Is gone," I lied, thinking of the envelope hidden in my desk. "I've already used it to save my business." "You bitch." He lunged at me again, but Marcus's partner caught him. "Wrong answer," Marcus said. "Let's go, Mr. Donovan." As they forced Liam into the SUV, he shouted, "This isn't over. Those are my daughters too." The SUV disappeared into the night, leaving me shaking on my front lawn. "Jesus, Margot," Zoe whispered. "What are you going to do?" My phone buzzed one final time. The anonymous texter, "Now you have a choice. Save him with George's money, or save your daughter's future. Choose wisely." I stared at the message, remembering Sophie and Lily's faces when they asked why Daddy missed their birthday. Remembering Helen's cruel words about proper wives. Remembering every lie, every betrayal, every moment I'd chosen to look the other way. "I'm going to do what I should have done months ago," I said, pulling out my phone to dial 911. "I'm going to protect what matters." But as I pressed the numbers, another text came through from Riley, "Don't call the police. There's something else you need to see first." Riley's text led me to a storage unit on the outskirts of town. She was already there, pacing nervously under the fluorescent lights. "I followed him here last week," she said, rolling up the metal door. After I realized what he'd done with the gallery money. The unit was filled with furniture, my furniture. Pieces from my showroom that had mysteriously failed delivery over the past year. But it wasn't just furniture. There were boxes of financial documents, multiple phones, and a laptop. "He was selling it all under the table," Riley said. "The furniture, the gallery scheme, the gambling, it was all connected. Marcus isn't just a loan shark. He's part of something bigger." I picked up one of the phones. "That's why you've been sending me anonymous texts." She nodded. "When I figured it out, I knew I had to warn you. But carefully. These people. They're dangerous." Headlights swept across the storage unit. A black SUV pulled up. "Right on time," Riley muttered. Marcus stepped out, followed by Liam and another man. When they saw us, Liam's face contorted with rage. You set me up, he snarled at Riley. No, I stepped forward. I did. The police are on their way. They're very interested in where all my inventory disappeared to. Marcus laughed. Police? You really think? I think the FBI is even more interested, I cut in, holding up my phone. Especially in your money laundering operation. My anonymous friend here has been very helpful with documentation. You stupid bitch, Liam lunged forward, but Marcus held him back. The money, Marcus said calmly. Where is it? Gone. Every penny you thought you could squeeze out of my business is gone. I met his eyes. I transferred it all back this morning. Turns out my bank was very understanding about fraud. You're lying. Check your accounts, Riley said. I helped her trace everything through the gallery records. It's over, Liam. Sirens wailed in the distance. Marcus's calm facade cracked. Get in the car, he ordered Liam. Now. No. Liam's voice shook. Margot, please. Think about the girls. They need their father. They need security and truth, I said. Two things you never gave them. He reached into his jacket. I'm not going to prison. Everything happened at once. Riley screamed as Liam pulled out a gun. Marcus and his man dove for their car. And I thought about my daughters, about the life I wanted for them, about the truth I needed them to understand someday. Shoot me then, I said quietly. Show them exactly who their father is. His hand trembled. In the distance, red and blue lights flashed. You ruined everything, he whispered. No, Liam. You did that all on your own. The gun clattered to the ground as police cars swarmed the storage unit. As officers rushed in, I watched them handcuff my husband, the father of my children, the man I'd once loved enough to build a life with. Agent Carter, one officer nodded to Riley. Good work. I turned to her in shock. She gave me a sad smile. I'm sorry for the deception, she said. We've been tracking this operation for months. Your husband's gambling debts gave us our way in. She touched her stomach gently. Some parts weren't an act, though. I thought about all her anonymous texts, how they'd led me here, how they'd helped me protect what mattered most. The girls, I said suddenly. I need to get to my girls. Go, Riley nodded. We'll need your statement tomorrow, but for now, go be with your daughters. As I drove home, my phone buzzed one last time. Unknown number, you did good, Margot. Your daughters have quite a mother. I deleted the message, thinking about the story I'd someday tell Sophie and Lily. Not about revenge or betrayal, but about truth and strength, and how sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that save us. 6 months later, I stood in my newly renovated showroom, watching Sophie and Lily chase each other between the furniture displays. The store's grand reopening was tomorrow, and despite everything, we'd survived. No running, girls, I called out, though I couldn't help smiling. Their laughter echoed through the space, drowning out the lingering ghosts of the past year. The bell above the door chimed. George stood there, looking uncertain until the twins spotted him. Grandpa. They rushed to hug him, and for a moment, I saw tears in his eyes. I brought something, he said, pulling out a small package. Found it while cleaning out the attic. Inside was a wooden music box, intricately carved. Helen's grandmother made this, he explained. For her first daughter. But she only had Liam, so. It's beautiful, I said softly. Helen wanted me to tell you she's sorry. He shifted uncomfortably. She's been different since the trial. I nodded, remembering Helen's face in the courtroom as Liam was sentenced. 7 years for fraud and money laundering. The proud Donovan name, tarnished by her only son. The girls miss her, I admitted. They can visit if she'd like. But there need to be boundaries. She understands. He watched the twins examining the music box. You know, Liam asked to see them. My hands clenched instinctively. What did you tell him? That it's not his choice anymore. That some privileges, once lost, have to be earned back. The bell chimed again. Riley walked in, her pregnancy now obvious beneath her flowing dress. Sorry I'm late, she said. Morning sickness doesn't care about schedules. The FBI investigation had ended months ago, but Riley had stayed in town. We'd formed an unexpected friendship, bound by shared betrayal and eventual healing. Aunt Riley. The girls abandoned the music box to greet her. They'd taken to her immediately, unaware of the complicated history between us. I should go, my George said. Helen's waiting. He hesitated. The music box. It should stay in the family. With them. After he left, Riley helped me arrange the final displays while the twins played nearby. Have you decided what to tell them? She asked quietly. About their brother or sister? I watched my daughters, so innocent and resilient. The truth, eventually. That family isn't just about blood or names. It's about choices and trust. And second chances? She touched her stomach meaningfully. Some kinds, I agreed. The earned ones. Later that night, as I tucked the girls into bed, Sophie asked the question I'd been dreading. Mommy, is Daddy ever coming home? I sat on the edge of their bed, choosing my words carefully. No, sweetheart. But that doesn't mean he doesn't love you. Because he made bad choices? Lily asked. Yes. And sometimes, loving someone means letting them face the consequences of their choices. Like when we have to sit in timeout? I smiled, stroking her hair. Something like that. After they fell asleep, I found the envelope George had given me months ago, still unopened in my desk. The retirement money he'd tried to save us with. I'd never needed it. The business insurance and FBI recovery of assets had covered most losses. But I'd kept it, unsure why. Now I knew. Tomorrow, I'd open a new account, 2 actually, 1 for each girl. Not for college or emergencies, but for something more important, choices. So they'd always have the freedom to choose their own paths, unburdened by anyone else's expectations or mistakes. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, not Riley this time, but someone new. He's asking questions about the girls. Watch your back. I deleted it without responding. Whatever came next, we'd face it together, me and my daughters, stronger for what we'd survived, wiser for what we'd learned. The music box sat on their dresser, its melody faint but clear in the quiet room. Not a lullaby of revenge or regret, but of renewal. Of beginnings that come after endings, and the courage to choose them.
The phone buzzed against the granite countertop, its screen lighting up with a message that would shatter my world. I wouldn't have noticed it at all if I hadn't been reaching for the salt to season our anniversary breakfast, Ryan's favorite Eggs Benedict. His phone usually stayed glued to his hand, but he'd left it behind during his morning shower. Can't wait to see you again. Last night was perfect. Delete this message. My hand trembled as I set down the whisk, hollandaise sauce forgotten. The sender's name read Melissa C. with a small heart emoji beside it. The timestamp showed 6:47 a.m., barely an hour ago. I'm Journey, and until that moment, I thought I knew what my life was. 12 years of marriage, a shared dream home in the suburbs, and plans for starting a family next spring. Now those plans felt like ashes in my mouth. The shower upstairs stopped running. I could hear Ryan's footsteps, the familiar creak of our bedroom floorboards. My fingers hovered over his phone, torn between the urge to dig deeper and the nauseating fear of what else I might find. Something smells amazing down there. Ryan called from upstairs. I swiped through to their message history. Empty. Of course he'd deleted everything else. My husband, the careful man. Always 3 steps ahead. Journey? Did you hear me? Just finishing up, I managed to call back, my voice steadier than I felt. I placed his phone exactly where I'd found it, arranged the breakfast plates, and waited. Ryan appeared in the doorway, hair still damp, wearing the blue button-down I'd given him last Christmas. He smiled, that same smile that had won me over at a mutual friend's barbecue 13 years ago. Now it made my stomach turn. Happy anniversary, beautiful. He wrapped his arms around my waist from behind, pressing a kiss to my neck. I forced myself not to stiffen, to play along. You didn't have to go all out. Apparently not, I murmured, sliding the plates onto our breakfast bar. What was that? Nothing. I smiled, watching him settle onto his usual stool. How was your shower? Good. Quick. He picked up his fork, then frowned at his phone. Did this light up while I was upstairs? Did it? I took a sip of coffee, studying him over the rim of my mug. I didn't notice. Ryan checked his messages, his expression never changing. 12 years together, and I'd never noticed how good he was at keeping his face neutral. What else had I missed? Work stuff, he said, tucking the phone into his pocket. You know how it is. Do I? He paused, fork halfway to his mouth. Everything okay? Who's Melissa? The words escaped before I could stop them, sharp and bitter as the coffee growing cold in my cup. The fork clattered against his plate. Just for a second, panic flashed across his face before that practiced calm returned. A new client. Why? A client who texts you at dawn about perfect nights? My voice didn't even sound like my own anymore. A client who needs you to delete their messages? Journey, I can explain. Please do. I pushed my untouched plate away. Explain how long you've been sleeping with her. Explain why you chose our anniversary morning to be careless enough to leave evidence. Explain how many other perfect nights there have been while I was here, planning our future. It's not what you think. He reached for my hand. I pulled away. Don't. The room felt too small suddenly, the kitchen island between us not nearly wide enough. Don't you dare try to touch me right now. We should talk about this. His tone turned placating, the same voice he used on difficult clients. You're jumping to conclusions. I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. You're right. We should talk. Maybe we can start with how you'll explain this to your mother at dinner tonight. The color drained from his face. You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? I headed for the stairs, leaving him with his perfect eggs Benedict and his imperfect lies. Happy anniversary, Ryan. I hope she was worth it. The Parker family dining room had always felt warm and inviting, but tonight the air was thick with unspoken accusations. I watched Lena fuss over the table settings, straightening the silverware for the third time while Dylan nursed his scotch in silence. Ryan hadn't arrived yet, probably crafting the perfect excuse for his bandaged hand and the dent in his precious Mercedes. Journey, dear, Lena's voice wavered slightly. Are you sure Ryan said he'd be here? It's not like him to be late to family dinner. I took another sip of wine, letting the bitter taste linger. Oh, he'll be here. He knows what's at stake. The doorbell rang, and Dylan set down his glass with a heavy thud. I'll get it. But it wasn't Ryan at the door. Instead, Chloe burst in, her face flushed with anger. I came as soon as I got your text. That lying piece of. Chloe, I cut her off, glancing meaningfully at Lena. Thank you for coming. I thought I might need a friend tonight. Understanding flickered across her face. She squeezed my hand as she sat beside me, while Lena's worried gaze darted between us. Is something wrong? Lena asked. Did something happen with Ryan's accident? The front door opened again before I could answer. Ryan stepped in, his right hand wrapped in gauze, his usual confidence dimmed. He froze when he saw Chloe. What's she doing here? Supporting her friend, Chloe replied coldly. Someone has to. Dylan cleared his throat. Son, what happened to your hand? Car accident, Ryan said quickly. Minor fender bender. Journey, can we talk privately? No. I smiled, the same practiced smile he'd perfected over years of deception. Actually, I think we should all hear about your accident. Especially the part about Melissa. Lena's fork clattered against her plate. Who's Melissa? Nobody, Ryan snapped. A client. Journey's upset over nothing. Nothing? I pulled out my phone, pulled up the photo Chloe had sent me an hour ago. Is that why you wrapped your car around a tree outside her apartment building at midnight? While your wife was sleeping at home? On our anniversary? The color drained from Ryan's face as I turned the screen toward his parents. The timestamp on the traffic camera photo was clear, 12:17 a.m. The Mercedes, the tree, and a woman in a red dress hurrying away from the scene. Ryan James Parker, Lena whispered, her voice breaking. Tell me this isn't what it looks like. It's complicated, he started, but Dylan cut him off. Complicated? Dylan's quiet voice carried more disappointment than anger. Son, there's nothing complicated about betraying your wife. You don't understand, Ryan insisted. Melissa's not just, there are things happening at work. At work? I laughed, the sound sharp and hollow. Is that what you call it? Because her message this morning seemed pretty clear about where the real work was happening. Chloe's hand tightened around mine as Ryan's facade finally cracked. You had no right to go through my phone. And you had no right to throw away 12 years of marriage for someone who left you bleeding in your car. The words exploded out of me. All the pain and rage I'd been containing since morning bursting free. I didn't, he stopped, swallowed hard. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. No. I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood. How was it supposed to happen, Ryan? Were you going to wait until after we started trying for that baby we talked about? Or maybe after I invested my inheritance in your new business venture? Lena gasped softly, and I saw the moment Ryan realized he'd lost not just me, but his parents too. Journey, please, he reached for me, but Chloe stepped between us. Don't you dare touch her. This isn't your business, he snarled at her. Actually, I pulled out another envelope, it is. Because while you were busy with Melissa, Chloe was helping me document everything. The late-night meetings, the mysterious withdrawals from our joint account, the calls from unknown numbers. I dropped the envelope on the table. Happy anniversary, darling. I filed for divorce this afternoon. The silence that followed was deafening. Dylan stood up first, walking to the liquor cabinet for another scotch. Lena dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. And Ryan just stood there, finally speechless, as his carefully constructed world began to crumble. Mom, Dad, I said softly, gathering my purse. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. But I thought you deserved the truth. I headed for the door, Chloe right beside me. And Ryan? Melissa says she's sorry about your hand. But not sorry enough to stick around when the cops showed up. I stood in our bedroom, my bedroom now, staring at the photograph that had slipped from between the pages of Ryan's leather planner. The image was like a knife to the chest, Ryan and Melissa at some rooftop bar, his arm around her waist, both laughing at something beyond the frame. The city lights sparkled behind them like stars, mocking the darkness spreading through my chest. The date stamp in the corner read 3 months ago. Our anniversary dinner at La Maison. The night he'd claimed he had to leave early for an emergency client meeting. My phone buzzed. Another message from Ryan, please come home. We can fix this. Home. I looked around at the carefully curated space we'd built together, the antique dresser we'd found at that estate sale in Vermont. The abstract painting from our honeymoon in Barcelona. Every piece held a memory, and every memory now felt tainted. The doorbell rang, startling me from my thoughts. Through the window, I spotted Chloe's car in the driveway. But there was someone else with her, a slim woman with dark hair who looked vaguely familiar. Journey? Chloe called from downstairs. You need to hear this. I tucked the photograph into my pocket and headed down. The dark-haired woman stood awkwardly in our foyer, wringing her hands. This is Olivia, Chloe said. Melissa's sister. My body went rigid. Get out. Please, Olivia stepped forward. I'm not here for Melissa. I'm here because you need to know the truth about what they're planning. Planning? The word felt bitter on my tongue. The business merger, Olivia said. The one that's going to destroy your husband's company. Chloe touched my arm gently. Let her talk, Journey. I led them to the kitchen, the same space where my world had imploded just days ago. Olivia perched on a bar stool, looking like she might bolt at any moment. Melissa works for Carlton Industries, she began. Has for years. They'd been trying to acquire Parker Tech for months, but Ryan wouldn't sell. What does that have to do with? I stopped, the pieces clicking into place. She was sent to seduce him? Olivia nodded. It's what she does. Gets close to key players, finds their weaknesses, exploits them. But this time. She pulled out her phone, showing me an email chain. This time she's going to destroy him completely. The emails detailed everything, the planned hostile takeover, the fabricated evidence of financial misconduct. The carefully orchestrated scandal that would leave Ryan professionally ruined. Why are you showing me this? My voice sounded distant, hollow. Because I'm tired of cleaning up my sister's messes, Olivia said. And because you deserve to know that Ryan wasn't just unfaithful, he was stupid. He told her everything about the company's vulnerabilities, their security protocols, their client lists. Journey, Chloe interrupted softly. Your inheritance. The room spun slightly. The investment Ryan had been pushing for, the papers still sitting unsigned in my desk drawer. He'd wanted me to sink my entire inheritance into Parker Tech's new security division, the same division that would have been worthless after Carlton's takeover. When? I managed to ask. The board meeting next week, Olivia replied. They're going to present evidence that Ryan's been embezzling funds, force an emergency sale. Melissa's already got copies of documents he signed while. She trailed off, looking uncomfortable. While he was distracted, I finished flatly. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Ryan. I know I messed up, but I need you. The company needs you. Please call me. I showed the message to Olivia, who winced. He knows something's wrong. Melissa's stopped returning his calls. Good. I deleted his message, then looked at Chloe. Call Max. We need a lawyer. Journey, Olivia hesitated. What are you going to do? I pulled out the photograph from my pocket, studying it one last time before ripping it in half. I'm going to beat them at their own game. Ryan wanted to risk my inheritance? Fine. But it's going to cost him everything. Chloe's eyes widened. You have a plan? I do now. I turned to Olivia. But I'll need your help. Both of you. Ryan and Melissa think they're so clever, playing their little games. I smiled, and for the first time in days, it felt real. Let's show them what real manipulation looks like. The charity gala at the Parker Tech headquarters felt like walking into a snake pit. Crystal chandeliers cast deceptively warm light over the crowd of shareholders and board members, all of them circling like vultures. Whispering behind champagne flutes. I adjusted my black dress, the one Ryan always said made me look dangerous, and caught his eye across the room. He was standing with Melissa, of course. Her red dress matched the lipstick on his collar from the photo Olivia had shown me earlier. They weren't even trying to hide anymore. Ready? Chloe appeared at my elbow, Max close behind her with a leather briefcase. Almost. I watched Ryan laugh at something Melissa said, his hand lingering on her lower back. Where's Olivia? In position. She has the USB drive with the evidence. Chloe's voice was steady, but her fingers drummed against her clutch nervously. Are you sure about this? Once we start. They're about to destroy everything he built, I cut in. I'm just making sure they destroy each other instead. Max cleared his throat. The board members are gathering. It's time. I moved through the crowd, accepting condolences from people who'd heard about the divorce filing. Ryan tensed as I approached his little circle, but Melissa's smile only widened. Journey, darling, she purred. I didn't expect to see you here. Wouldn't miss it. I turned to the board chairman beside them. Mr. Phillips, I believe you were interested in discussing my investment in the company? Ryan's glass froze halfway to his lips. What? Oh, didn't Melissa tell you? I pulled out the investment papers from my clutch. We had the most fascinating conversation this morning about the company's future. She made quite a compelling case for why I should invest my inheritance now, before the big announcement. Melissa's smile slipped. I don't. In fact, I continued, she explained everything about Carlton Industries' plans. Very thorough, wasn't she, Ryan? Though I suppose you already knew all about that. The color drained from both their faces as phones around the room began buzzing. Right on schedule, Olivia had released the emails to every board member and major shareholder. What did you do? Ryan grabbed my arm, but Max stepped between us. Careful, Max warned quietly. There are cameras everywhere. Melissa was already backing away, her predatory confidence evaporating as board members began turning to stare at her, their phones in hand. It's not what you think, she started, but Phillips cut her off. Is this true? He waved his phone at Ryan. Have you been feeding company information to Carlton? Of course not. Ryan looked desperately between me and Melissa. Journey, whatever you think you know. Oh, I know everything. I smiled, the same smile he'd taught me over 12 years of marriage. The embezzlement scheme, the fake accounts, the planned takeover. Even that interesting transfer to an offshore account last week. Tell me, was that before or after your little accident outside her apartment? Security was moving through the crowd now, heading for Melissa as she edged toward the exit. Ryan reached for me again, his face twisted with rage and fear. You're bluffing. You can't prove. Actually, Olivia's voice rang out as she emerged from the crowd, we can prove all of it. Hello, sister dear. Melissa's composure finally cracked. You little bitch. Careful, I interrupted. The SEC doesn't like it when corporate spies show their temper. Oh, and they're very interested in those documents you had Ryan sign during your private meetings. The security team reached Melissa just as she lunged for her sister. In the chaos that followed, Melissa screaming, Ryan trying to explain to increasingly hostile board members. Phillips calling for an emergency meeting, I felt strangely calm. Journey, Ryan called as I turned to leave. Wait. Please. I can explain everything. I paused, looking back at the man I'd loved for so long. You know what the funny thing is? I actually believe you could explain it. You've always been good at explaining things, Ryan. But I'm done listening. The last thing I saw as the elevator doors closed was Melissa being led away in handcuffs, Ryan standing alone in a circle of accusatory stares. And Olivia raising her champagne glass in a silent toast to the destruction of her sister's carefully laid plans. The police station's interrogation room felt smaller with each passing hour. Detective Santos pushed another cup of coffee across the metal table, her expression unreadable as she reviewed my statement. Let me make sure I understand, she said. You're claiming Miss Carter orchestrated the entire affair to gain access to Parker Tech's confidential information? Yes. I wrapped my fingers around the warm cup, anchoring myself. But that's not why I'm here. No, Santos agreed. You're here because Melissa Carter was found unconscious in her apartment last night. And your soon-to-be ex-husband is missing. The words hung in the air like smoke. Through the one-way glass, I could see Olivia pacing in the hallway, her face pale with worry. She'd called me at midnight, her voice shaking, "Melissa's in the hospital. Ryan was at her place. There's something I need to tell you. Miss Parker?" Santos leaned forward. "Where were you between 10 p.m. and midnight last night?" "With Chloe Bennett. We were reviewing divorce paperwork." "Convenient timing." I met her gaze steadily. "Nothing about this has been convenient." The door opened, and Max stepped in, his lawyer mode in full effect. "My client has cooperated fully. Unless you're charging her." "Not yet." Santos slid a photograph across the table. "But we found this in Miss Carter's apartment." My hands trembled as I picked up the image. It showed Ryan and me at our wedding, but my face had been scratched out violently. Scrawled across it in red ink, "She knows too much." "That's Melissa's handwriting," I said quietly. "Are you sure?" Santos asked. "Because we found similar notes in your house when we searched it this morning. Along with these." She produced an evidence bag containing letters, dozens of them. My throat tightened as I recognized Ryan's handwriting, mixed with another I didn't know. "They go back 6 months, Santos continued. "Long before the affair became public." "Care to explain?" The door burst open before I could respond. Olivia rushed in, ignoring Max's attempt to stop her. "You have to tell them," she blurted. "About the other women. About what Melissa really did." Santos's eyebrows rose. "Other women?" "Olivia," I warned, but she was already pulling out her phone. "Show them the videos," she insisted. "The ones Melissa kept. The ones she used to." A commotion in the hallway cut her off. Through the open door, I saw Ryan being led in handcuffs, his face bruised and bloody. Our eyes met for a moment before they took him to another room. "Interesting timing," Santos observed. "Want to revise your statement?" I looked at the evidence spread across the table, the letters, the photo, the lies layered upon lies. Melissa's schemes had run deeper than any of us knew, and now Ryan's blood was quite literally on her hands. "Yes," I said finally. "But not about last night. About 6 months ago, when Melissa Carter first approached me about helping her take down Parker Tech." Max tensed beside me. "Journey, don't." "She showed me proof," I continued, ignoring him. "About Ryan's other affairs. About the money he'd been stealing. About the women before me who'd tried to expose him and disappeared. I agreed to help her because I thought I was protecting other women. But I didn't know." "Didn't know what?" "That she was one of them. That this whole thing, the affair, the company takeover, even my revenge, was part of her plan all along." I pulled out my own phone. "Hands steady now. And I can prove it." Santos studied me for a long moment. "Why come forward now?" "Because Ryan wasn't at Melissa's apartment to hurt her last night. I played the video Olivia had sent me hours ago. He was there to stop her from killing me." The surveillance footage showed Ryan confronting Melissa, her gun visible, their argument silent behind the glass. Then the struggle, the gunshot, Ryan's panic as she fell. "Jesus," Santos muttered. "So you see," I said quietly, "the real question isn't where I was last night. It's why Melissa Carter is still alive when she's tried to kill every other woman who got close to the truth about Parker Tech. And why my husband, who I thought was the villain in this story, just saved my life." The hospital corridor stretched endlessly before me, its fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows across the linoleum. 2 police officers flanked Melissa's door, their expressions hardening as I approached. Through the window, I could see her lying there, tubes snaking from her arms. Looking far more vulnerable than the woman who'd tried to destroy my life. "You shouldn't be here," Detective Santos materialized beside me, coffee in hand. "It's against protocol. She tried to kill me. And now you're here, alone, in the middle of the night." Santos raised an eyebrow. "That doesn't exactly help your case." My phone vibrated, another message from Ryan's lawyer. "They denied his bail an hour ago." The evidence I provided had helped explain his actions at Melissa's apartment. But 12 years of marriage hadn't prepared me for seeing him led away in handcuffs, his face still bloody from their struggle. "I need to talk to her," I said quietly. "That's not happening." Santos stepped between me and the door. "Go home, Miss Parker. Let us handle this. Like you handled the other cases?" I pulled out the file Olivia had given me. Sarah Mitchell, 2018. Rebecca Torres, 2019. Both worked at Parker Tech. Both disappeared after filing harassment claims. Both cases went cold. Santos's expression shifted slightly. "Where did you get that?" "Melissa's laptop. The one Ryan was trying to retrieve when she pulled the gun." I handed her the file. "There's more. Much more. But she'll only talk to me. This is blackmail. This is survival." I met her gaze steadily. 5 minutes. That's all I need. The detective studied me for a long moment before nodding to the officers. They stepped aside, and I entered the lion's den. Melissa's eyes opened as I approached her bed. Despite the bruises and bandages, her smile was still razor-sharp. "I wondered when you'd come," she whispered. "Where are they?" "Who?" "Sarah. Rebecca. The others." I moved closer, my voice low. "Ryan's in jail because he tried to stop you. The least you can do is tell me the truth." She laughed, the sound hollow and harsh. "The truth? You wouldn't recognize it if it slapped you in the face. Your perfect husband, your perfect marriage, it was all a lie long before I came along." "What are you talking about?" "Ask him about Project Phoenix." She shifted, wincing. "Ask him why those women really disappeared. Ask him why he married you in the first place." My blood ran cold. "What does that mean?" "It means," she reached for something under her pillow, "that you're not the hero of this story, Journey. You're just another pawn." The flash of metal was my only warning. I lunged backward as the scalpel sliced through the air where my throat had been. Melissa's monitor began screaming as she launched herself from the bed, medical equipment crashing around us. "He chose you because you were convenient," she snarled, swinging again. "Because your father's company had what Parker Tech needed." I stumbled against the wall as Santos burst in, weapon drawn. "Drop it. Tell her." Melissa's eyes were wild, blood seeping through her hospital gown. "Tell her about the merger papers her father signed the day before his accident." The scalpel clattered to the floor as she collapsed, orderlies rushing in with restraints. But her words had found their mark more effectively than any blade. My father's death. The convenient timing of meeting Ryan. The rushed marriage that had surprised everyone. All of it suddenly viewed through a new, horrifying lens. "Journey?" Santos touched my arm. "Are you all right?" I shook my head, unable to speak. My phone buzzed again, not Ryan's lawyer this time, but Olivia. "Found something in Melissa's storage unit," her message read. "About your father. You need to see this now." As they wheeled Melissa away, her laughter echoing down the corridor, I realized that my quest for revenge had led me somewhere far darker than I'd imagined. The truth about Ryan, about my father's death, about my entire marriage, it was all connected to something much bigger than a simple affair. And now I had to decide, keep digging and risk losing everything I thought I knew about my life, or walk away and live with the questions forever. The visiting room at the county jail felt smaller than it had any right to be. Ryan sat across from me, the bruises on his face faded to sickly yellows and greens. Between us lay the contents of Olivia's discovery, my father's autopsy report, Project Phoenix files, and a USB drive that had destroyed every certainty I'd ever had about my marriage. "How long?" My voice didn't shake. I was proud of that. "Journey. How long were you planning it before my father died?" He leaned forward, chains rattling against the metal table. "It wasn't supposed to happen that way. The brake lines. That wasn't part of the plan. But marrying his daughter was? I pushed the merger documents toward him, making sure his company fell into Parker Tech's hands after his convenient accident. I loved you. His eyes met mine, and for the first time in 12 years, I saw real desperation there. That wasn't part of the plan either. Don't. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against concrete. Don't you dare pretend. It's the truth. He tried to reach for me, but the chains stopped him. Everything changed after I met you. Why do you think Melissa targeted me? She knew I'd stopped pushing forward with Phoenix because of you. The door opened behind me. Detective Santos stepped in, holding a phone. We found Sarah Mitchell. My heart stopped. Alive? She nodded. In witness protection. She's willing to testify about Phoenix, about Parker Tech's involvement in corporate espionage. And about your father's murder. Ryan's face went slack. You don't understand what you're doing. These people. These people? I laughed, the sound brittle as glass. You mean your father? Dylan's fingerprints are all over these documents. He ordered the hit on my father, didn't he? And you just played along, seduced the grieving daughter to keep her quiet. To protect you. He slammed his hands down, making Santos step forward. Once you were part of the family, you were safe. As long as you didn't know. Safe? I pulled out my phone, showing him the security footage from my house. Is that why Melissa broke in last night? Why she tried to access my father's old files? He went very still. When was this? 3 hours ago. Chloe's watching the house now. Waiting. Call her. His voice turned urgent. Now. Get her out of there. They're not after the files, Journey. They're after you. Santos was already on her radio, but I knew it was too late. My phone buzzed with Chloe's text, company's here. Dylan and 3 others. Following the plan. You knew. Ryan's accusation cut through my rising panic. You're using my father's predictability against him. Like father, like son. I gathered the documents, leaving one photo behind, our wedding day. The last picture taken of me smiling genuinely at the man I thought I loved. The difference is, I learned from the best how to play the long game. Journey, please. Real fear crept into his voice. Whatever you're planning is already done. I nodded to Santos, who produced an arrest warrant. The FBI is raiding Parker Tech right now. Every document, every file about Phoenix, about my father. It's all going public. Dylan's walking into a trap, and Melissa's testimony from the hospital was the final nail in the coffin. You'll destroy everything. No, I corrected him quietly. You did that 12 years ago when you chose your father's corruption over the truth. I'm just finishing what you started. My phone buzzed again, the signal. Somewhere across town, Dylan Parker was being led away in handcuffs, his corporate empire crumbling around him. And in a hospital room, Melissa Carter was signing a full confession, her immunity deal secured by the evidence she'd helped me gather. For what it's worth, I said, pausing at the door, I loved you too. That's what made it so easy to make you believe I was still the same naive girl you married. The last thing I saw as the door closed was understanding dawning in his eyes, the realization that his perfect, trusting wife had orchestrated his downfall from the moment she found that first text message, playing every player at their own game. Some might call it revenge. I called it justice. The courtroom emptied slowly, leaving me alone with the echo of the judge's verdict. Guilty on all counts, corporate espionage, conspiracy, murder. The Parker family legacy, dismantled in less than 2 hours. I gathered my belongings, fingers brushing against my father's old watch in my purse. The evidence had proven what I'd suspected. He'd discovered Project Phoenix, threatened to expose it, and paid with his life. Now, 12 years later, justice had finally been served. Miss Parker? I turned to find Lena standing in the doorway, looking smaller somehow without her usual perfect posture and designer clothes. "I'm not here to defend them," she said quickly. I needed you to know I had no idea about any of it." "I believe you." The words surprised us both with their sincerity. She nodded, twisting her wedding ring, a nervous habit I'd never noticed before. "The house in Vermont. The one you loved so much. I'm signing it over to you. Lena. Please." Her voice cracked slightly. "Let me do this one thing right." The door opened again before I could respond. Olivia entered, followed by Sarah Mitchell, alive, whole, and ready to rebuild her life now that her testimony had helped bring down Parker Tech. "The reporters are waiting," Olivia warned. "And Melissa's lawyer called. She wants to meet." "No." I shouldered my bag, feeling lighter somehow. "Tell her I'm done playing her games. She got her deal, she can live with the consequences of her choices. Just like the rest of us." Lena touched my arm gently as I passed. "What will you do now?" The question should have felt heavy, but instead it tasted like freedom. "My father's company is being restored to its original shareholders. There's work to be done, wrongs to right. Journey." She hesitated. "Ryan asked to see you. One last time, before they transfer him." I thought of our last conversation in that prison visiting room, of all the lies and truths tangled together across 12 years of marriage. Of the man I'd loved and the monster he'd protected. Of the naive wife I'd pretended to be while methodically dismantling their empire. "Tell him." I smiled, genuine for the first time in months. "Tell him I learned from the best." Outside, Chloe waited by her car, holding a thick envelope. "The last of the evidence files. Detective Santos says we're officially done." "Not quite." I took the envelope, then handed her a different one. "The foundation paperwork. For the victims of corporate fraud and whistleblower protection. I need a director I can trust." Her eyes widened. "Journey. You stood by me through all of it," I said quietly. "Help me make sure no one else has to go through this alone." The late afternoon sun caught the face of my father's watch as I checked the time. Somewhere across town, Dylan Parker was beginning his life sentence. Ryan would soon join him. Melissa's immunity deal would keep her out of prison, but her reputation was destroyed. The mighty had fallen, and the truth had finally come to light. "You know," Chloe said as we drove away from the courthouse, "most people would feel vindicated right now. Triumphant." I watched the city scroll past, thinking of all the moments that had led to this one. The breakfast I'd been preparing when I found that first text. The family dinner where everything began to unravel. The hospital room where Melissa had finally revealed the truth about my father's death. "I don't feel triumphant," I admitted. "I feel free. Awake." I turned to her, understanding flowing through me like a river breaking through ice. For 12 years, I lived someone else's version of my life. Now I get to discover who I really am. And who is that? I thought of Lena's gift, the house in Vermont where I'd once dreamed of raising a family. Of Sarah Mitchell, alive and ready to reclaim her story. Of my father's company, waiting to be rebuilt into something honest and true. "Someone who knows the difference between revenge and justice," I said finally. "And chooses justice every time." The city stretched out before us, full of possibilities and second chances. Not an ending, but a beginning, one entirely of my own making.
The notification from my banking app lit up my phone at exactly 2:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. I remember the time precisely because I was in the middle of a quarterly financial review meeting when my world started to crack. My name is Evie, and I used to think I had my life perfectly arranged, like the spreadsheets I spend my days analyzing. The message showed a withdrawal of $47,000 from our joint savings account. My stomach dropped as I stared at the screen, the numbers burning into my retinas while my colleague's voice faded into white noise. "Evie?" The Thompson account projections? I snapped my head up, meeting my supervisor's questioning gaze. Sorry, I just need to. Excuse me for a moment. I grabbed my phone and practically ran to the bathroom, my heels clicking against the marble floor in an uneven rhythm. With trembling fingers, I called Travis. It rang 6 times before going to voicemail. Of course. My husband's phone was perpetually set to silent when he was in the zone with his photography. I tried again. And again. Finally, on the 4th attempt, "Hey babe, what's up? I'm kind of in the middle of a shoot. Travis, why is there a $47,000 withdrawal from our account?" My voice echoed off the bathroom tiles, and I lowered it to a harsh whisper. Please tell me this is some kind of mistake. There was a pause, too long to be innocent. Oh, that. Yeah, I was going to tell you about it tonight. It's for some new equipment I need for this huge corporate gig I landed. The client's paying double my usual rate, so we'll have it back in no time. The explanation seemed reasonable enough, but something in his tone made my skin prickle. After 8 years of marriage, I knew when Travis was feeding me half-truths. What equipment costs exactly $47,000? I pressed. Listen, I can't really talk right now. The client's waiting. We'll discuss it over dinner, okay? Love you. He hung up before I could respond. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, noting how the fluorescent lights made me look as pale as I felt. Something wasn't adding up, and if there's one thing I can't stand, it's numbers that don't balance. Back at my desk, I couldn't focus on work. Instead of analyzing market trends, I found myself logging into our online banking portal. The withdrawal had been made in cash, at a branch across town. Travis hadn't used his card for any major photography equipment purchases recently. In fact, looking at his transaction history, there was a pattern of increasingly large withdrawals over the past few months that I'd somehow missed. When I got home that evening, the house was dark. A text from Travis said he'd be late, the shoot was running over. I sat in our home office, the blue light from his laptop casting shadows on the wall. He always left it logged in, trusting me completely. Or maybe he was just careless. I hesitated only a moment before opening his email. It felt wrong, invasive, but the nagging feeling in my gut wouldn't let go. That's when I found the folder labeled Investment Opportunities. Inside were hundreds of emails from online gambling sites, payment confirmations, and desperate messages to someone named Victor about making things right. My phone buzzed with another text from Travis, "Grab dinner with the client. Don't wait up. Tomorrow night, I promise we'll talk." I closed the laptop and walked to our bedroom, where I opened his side of the closet. Behind his carefully arranged camera equipment and the vintage leather jacket I'd given him for his birthday, I found a stack of papers stuffed into an old shoebox. Bank statements, loan applications, and at the bottom, a letter from a collection agency demanding immediate payment of $86,000. The Travis I thought I knew would never hide something like this. But then again, maybe I never really knew Travis at all. And that realization scared me more than any number on those statements. I barely slept that night, watching Travis's side of the bed remain empty until dawn. When he finally stumbled in around 6 a.m., I pretended to be asleep, studying him through barely open eyes as he kicked off his shoes and collapsed fully clothed onto the mattress. My brother Sam's law office was only a 10-minute walk from my workplace, but it felt like miles that morning. Each step was heavy with the weight of what I'd discovered. When I arrived, his secretary waved me straight through. Being the boss's sister had its perks. "You look like hell," Sam said, not looking up from his computer. When I didn't respond with our usual banter, he finally raised his eyes. "Evie?" I dropped the stack of papers I'd found in Travis's closet onto his desk. "I need your help." Sam picked up the collection notice, his expression darkening as he read. "Jesus Christ. 86,000? Plus the 47 from your savings? He shuffled through the papers, his lawyer face settling in. How long has this been going on? I don't know. My voice cracked. I thought I knew everything about our finances. I'm supposed to be good at this, Sam. It's literally my job. This isn't your fault. Sam leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his graying hair. Remember when Travis bought that vintage Harley right before your wedding? He sold it 3 months later. Said it wasn't practical. No, Evie. He crashed it. Totally wrecked. But instead of telling you, he took out a personal loan to replace it before you found out. Sam's words hit me like a punch to the gut. I helped him with the paperwork. He swore it was a one-time thing, that he'd learned his lesson. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Why didn't you tell me? He was about to become my brother-in-law. He seemed genuinely sorry, and the amount was manageable. Sam's face softened. I should have told you. I'm sorry. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Travis's mother, Maggie, dinner tonight? Haven't seen you both in ages. 7 p.m.? I showed Sam the message. He shook his head. You should go. Keep things normal while we figure this out. I'll make some calls, see what kind of legal exposure you're facing. That evening, I arrived at Maggie's colonial-style house alone, having told Travis to meet me there after his shoot. The familiar scent of her lasagna filled the air as she pulled me into a warm hug. Where's my boy? She asked, leading me into the kitchen. Running late. Client meeting. The lie felt bitter on my tongue. Oh, he's been so busy lately. Did he show you the beautiful watch he bought last week? Said it was a gift for a friend who helped him land that big corporate contract. My hand froze on the wine glass I was reaching for. A watch? Aha. Must have cost a fortune. You know how Travis is, always going overboard with gifts. Remember that gorgeous painting he bought me last month? The artist was such a lovely young thing. What was her name? Lila something? The room suddenly felt too warm. I don't think Travis mentioned her. Oh, you should see her work. She has this little gallery downtown. Travis has been helping her with photography for her upcoming show. Such a generous boy, just like his father. The front door opened, and Travis's voice called out, "Something smells amazing." He appeared in the kitchen doorway, and for a moment, I saw him through new eyes. His carefully tousled hair, the expensive camera bag slung over his shoulder, the easy smile that had made me fall in love with him. All of it felt like a carefully constructed facade. Sorry I'm late, he said, kissing his mother's cheek before moving to do the same to me. I turned my head slightly, making his lips land on my jaw instead of my mouth. If he noticed, he didn't show it. Travis, honey, Maggie said, I was just telling Evie about that beautiful watch you bought. The one for your friend? I watched his face carefully, noting the slight tightening around his eyes. The way his hand paused for a fraction of a second as he reached for the wine bottle. Oh, right, he said smoothly. Just a thank you gift for a client referral. 3 lies in one evening, and dinner hadn't even started yet. I took a long sip of wine, wondering how many more revelations were waiting to shatter what remained of my marriage. The business card felt heavy in my hand. Davidson Investigations, discretion guaranteed. Sam had slipped it to me after that disastrous dinner at Maggie's, along with a stern warning about keeping everything legal. 3 days later, I sat across from Mike Davidson in his downtown office, watching him scroll through the photos on his tablet. Your husband's been busy, he said, turning the screen toward me. These are from the past week. The first image showed Travis entering what looked like a rundown sports bar. The timestamp read 2:14 p.m., right when he'd told me he was meeting with clients. The next showed him leaving 3 hours later, looking considerably more disheveled. But it was the third photo that made my stomach lurch. Travis was standing outside an art gallery, his hand on the small of a woman's back. She was laughing, her head thrown back, dark curls cascading down her shoulders. Even from the grainy surveillance photo, I could tell she was beautiful. "That's Lila Bennett," Davidson said, his voice matter of fact. "She owns the gallery. Your husband's been there 6 times in the past 2 weeks, usually staying for several hours." My throat felt tight. "The watch?" Davidson nodded, swiping to another photo. Travis and Lila outside a high-end jewelry store, his arm around her waist. The timestamp matched the day of the $47,000 withdrawal. "There's more," Davidson said, hesitating. "The sports bar? It's a known front for illegal gambling. Your husband's got himself mixed up with some dangerous people. A man named Victor Ramirez runs the operation." Victor. The name from the emails. "How much does he owe?" Davidson pulled out a manila envelope. "Based on our surveillance and some conversations with inside sources, we estimate around $200,000. The $86,000 collection notice you found? That's just the tip of the iceberg." The room started spinning. $200,000. Our entire savings, gone. Our future, evaporated. "Mrs. Mitchell." "Parker," I corrected automatically. I'd kept my name after marriage, something that had always bothered Travis's mother. "Mrs. Parker, there's something else you should know." Davidson's expression softened slightly. "The gallery? It's not doing well. According to public records, it's 3 months behind on rent. But last week, someone paid all the back rent in cash." My laugh came out hollow. "Let me guess. Right after the withdrawal?" Davidson nodded. "Your husband's playing a dangerous game. These people don't mess around when it comes to collecting debts." That night, I waited up for Travis. He came home around midnight, smelling of expensive cologne that wasn't his usual brand. When he kissed my cheek, I had to force myself not to flinch. "How was your day?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Good. Productive. Got that corporate campaign wrapped up finally." He loosened his tie, heading for the shower. "The one you needed the equipment for?" He paused. "Yeah, that one." "Funny," I said, following him into the bathroom. "Because I called your regular clients today. None of them have hired you for any corporate work recently." Travis froze, his hand on the shower door. "You did what?" "Where's the equipment, Travis?" "The stuff you spent our savings on?" "You're checking up on me now?" His voice took on an edge I'd never heard before. "Going behind my back? Like you went behind mine with Lila?" The color drained from his face. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the drip of the faucet, marking time like a metronome. "It's not what you think," he finally said. "Really?" "Because I think you're gambling away our future while buying expensive gifts for another woman." My voice cracked. "I think you're lying to me, to your mother, to everyone." "Evie, please." My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number: "Tell your husband he has 48 hours to pay what he owes, or things get uncomfortable." V. I held up the phone, watching Travis's face crumple as he read the message. Who's Victor, Travis? And what exactly happens when things get uncomfortable? Travis's confession came in pieces, each one more devastating than the last. We sat in our kitchen as dawn crept through the windows, the threat from Victor hanging between us like a blade. "I can fix this," Travis kept saying, his hands shaking as he poured his third cup of coffee. "I just need a little more time." Time for what? To lose more money? To buy more watches for Lila? His head snapped up. Leave her out of this. She has nothing to do with. With what? The gambling? The lies? Or just the part where you're destroying our life? The silence that followed felt like glass about to shatter. I pulled out Davidson's photos, spreading them across the kitchen table like a twisted timeline of betrayal. $200,000, Travis. Where did you think this would end? He stared at the photos, his face ashen. I was winning at first. Big wins. The kind of money that could set us up for life. Then Victor offered to stake me for bigger games, and he trailed off, running his hands through his hair. I just needed one more good hand. One more chance to make it right. And Lila? Was she just another bet? She's a friend. That's all. But he wouldn't meet my eyes. The gallery was going under. I couldn't let that happen. So you used our savings? Money we worked for, planned for? I used my inheritance from Dad. His voice was barely a whisper. The room tilted sideways. What inheritance? The life insurance money. It came through last month. I never told you because. He swallowed hard. Because I'd already lost most of it by then. I grabbed the edge of the table, steadying myself. The insurance money was supposed to be substantial, enough to start the photography studio Travis had always dreamed about. The future we'd planned together. How much was it? $300,000. My laugh came out like broken glass. So you're telling me you've lost $500,000? Our savings, the insurance, and now you owe money to criminals? Travis reached for my hand. I pulled away, my wedding ring catching the morning light. The same ring he'd insisted on upgrading last year, claiming his business was doing well enough to afford it. Was that bought with gambling money too? His silence was answer enough. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Victor, time's running out. Meeting at the usual place. 3 p.m. Bring the money or bring a lawyer. I'll talk to him, Travis said, reading over my shoulder. Maybe I can negotiate. No. I stood up, my decision crystallizing. You're done negotiating. Done gambling. Done lying. What are you going to do? I grabbed my car keys. I'm going to meet Lila. Evie, don't. You lost the right to tell me what to do when you bet our future on a poker game. The drive to Lila's gallery took 20 minutes. Each mile brought a new question, a new doubt. Had they laughed about me together? Had he told her about our fights, our dreams, our struggles? The gallery was small but elegant, tucked between a coffee shop and a vintage bookstore. Through the window, I could see her arranging photographs on a white wall. Travis's photographs. My husband's art, displayed like love letters for everyone to see. The bell chimed as I pushed open the door. Lila turned, her smile warm and professional. Welcome to Bennett Gallery. How can I? I'm Evie Parker. I watched recognition flash across her face. Or as you might know me, Travis Mitchell's wife. She dropped the photograph she was holding. It hit the floor with a crack, the glass splintering across the polished concrete. In that broken reflection, I saw both our faces, two women caught in the same man's web of lies. His wife? Her voice trembled. But he said he was divorced. That his ex-wife. Let me guess. That his ex-wife took everything in the settlement? That he's still paying off her debts? Lila sank into a nearby chair, her face draining of color. Oh God. The money he gave me for the gallery was stolen, I finished. Just like everything else. Lila and I sat in her back office, 2 cups of untouched coffee growing cold between us. Her gallery walls were covered in Travis's photographs, moments he'd captured while lying to us both. I recognized some of them from the days he'd claimed to be at client meetings. He said the money was from his photography business, Lila whispered, staring at her trembling hands. That he wanted to invest in emerging artists. My phone buzzed again. 2 hours until Victor's deadline. Did he ever mention gambling? I asked. She shook her head, then stopped. Wait. There was this one night. He was acting strange, kept checking his phone. Said he needed to meet someone about an investment opportunity. When he came back. She swallowed hard. His knuckles were bruised. The gallery door chimed. We both turned to see Travis stumbling in, his face pale and sweating. Evie, please, you can't be here, he froze when he saw Lila. I can explain everything. Like you explained being divorced? Lila stood up, her artist's hands clenched into fists. Or how you explained the gallery money? I was going to pay it back. All of it. Victor just needs. Victor? Lila's voice cracked. The same Victor who sent those men here last week? I felt the blood drain from my face. What men? They came looking for Travis. Said something about collateral. She hugged herself, shrinking into herself. They took some of the artwork. Said it was insurance. Travis stepped forward. Lila, I'm so sorry. I never meant. The sharp crack of her palm against his cheek echoed through the gallery. Get out. Both of you. I'm calling the police. You can't, Travis pleaded. Victor will. Will what? I demanded. Hurt us. Like he hurt you that night? Before Travis could answer, the gallery door chimed again. 2 men in expensive suits entered, their presence filling the small space like smoke before a fire. Time's up, Mitchell, the taller one said. Victor's waiting. Travis's face went from pale to gray. I just need one more day. No more days. The man's eyes swept over the gallery, lingering on Lila's frightened face before settling on me. Though maybe we can work something out. Victor's always had an eye for alternative payment methods. I felt something snap inside me, not like breaking, but like a lock clicking open. All the fear and hurt of the past weeks crystallized into something harder, colder. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone, I'd like to speak to Victor myself. Evie, don't, Travis started. Shut up. My voice was ice. You've done enough talking. I turned to the men. Tell Victor the first have a proposition. One that involves Travis's inheritance money. The shorter man raised an eyebrow. The insurance payout's gone, lady. Your husband blew through it weeks ago. No, I smiled, pulling up the email from Sam I'd received that morning. He only got half of it. The other half was meant to go to his mother, but there was a clerical error. The insurance company just released the funds this morning. I have access to the account details. Travis's eyes widened. How did you? While you were busy destroying our lives, I was actually trying to save them. I turned back to Victor's men. Tell him I want to meet. Just me. And tell him to bring proof of Travis's debts. All of them. The taller man made a call, speaking quietly into his phone. After a moment, he nodded. Victor will see you. Now. As we headed for the door, Lila called out, Evie? What are you going to do? I looked at Travis, seeing him clearly for the first time, not as the man I'd married, but as the stranger he'd become. I'm going to make sure everyone gets exactly what they deserve. The men led me to a waiting car, leaving Travis standing in the gallery doorway. His reflection fractured across the broken photograph still lying on the floor. In that moment, I realized revenge wasn't about hurting someone who hurt you. Sometimes, it was about making sure justice came in exactly the right form at exactly the right time. And I knew exactly what form Travis's justice needed to take. Victor's office was nothing like I'd imagined. No dark warehouse or smoky backroom, just a pristine suite in a downtown high-rise with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He sat behind a glass desk, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. "Mrs. Parker," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "I appreciate punctuality in business matters." I placed Sam's legal documents on the desk. "Let's talk about Travis's debt." Victor smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Your husband owes me $200,000. The terms were clear." "Show me." He slid a leather folder across the desk. Inside were promissory notes, each signed in Travis's familiar scrawl. The dates aligned perfectly with our missing savings, the withdrawn inheritance, the gallery payments to Lila. "And the interest?" I asked. "Compounds daily. Currently at 40%. My hands clenched in my lap. "That's illegal. So is gambling in my establishment. Yet here we are." Victor leaned forward. "I understand you have access to the remaining insurance money?" "I do. But I have conditions." His eyebrow raised slightly. "You're not in a position to negotiate, Mrs. Parker." "Actually, I am." I pulled out my phone, showing him the email from Sam. "This money legally belongs to Maggie Mitchell. One call from me, and she'll know everything, the gambling, the debt, the threats. How do you think it'll look when a grieving widow goes to the police about loan sharks threatening her son?" Victor's smile vanished. "You're playing a dangerous game." "No, I'm ending one." I met his gaze steadily. "Here's my offer. I'll transfer the insurance money, all $150,000. In exchange, you'll sign a document stating Travis's debt is paid in full. And you'll never contact him again. That's less than what he owes. It's more than you'll get if I walk out that door." The silence stretched between us like a wire about to snap. Finally, Victor nodded to one of his men, who produced a document. "Sign here," Victor said. "The money first, then I sign." My hand shook as I made the transfer. When it was done, Victor signed the release with a flourish. "A pleasure doing business," he said. "Though I'm curious, why save him? After everything he's done?" "I'm not saving him," I replied, standing. "I'm making sure he faces the right consequences." Outside, Travis was waiting by the car, pacing nervously. "Evie? What happened? Are we okay?" I handed him the signed release. "The debt's paid. You're free." His shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank God. Baby, I promise I'll make this up to you. We can start fresh." "No, Travis. We can't." He froze. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I just used your mother's inheritance to save your life. Money that was meant to support her after losing your father." I stepped back as he reached for me. "The gallery's pressing charges for fraud. Lila's lawyer will be contacting you about the stolen funds. And I've already filed for divorce. Evie, please. You have two choices," I cut him off. "Either you check into rehab today, right now, or I call your mother and tell her everything. How you gambled away her husband's insurance money. How you stole from a grieving artist. How you nearly got us both killed." Travis's face crumpled. "I need help," he whispered. "I know." I pulled out one last piece of paper, the admission form for a treatment center. "That's why I already made the arrangements." "Will you?" He swallowed hard. "Will you wait for me?" I thought about all the nights I'd waited for him, not knowing he was gambling away our future. About Lila, waiting in her gallery for a man who'd never really existed. About Maggie, still waiting for her son to become the man his father had been. "No," I said softly. "But maybe someday, you'll be someone worth waiting for." I watched as Victor's men escorted Travis to another car, heading for the treatment center. My phone buzzed with a text from Sam, papers filed. "You okay?" I looked at our reflection in the building's mirrored surface, Travis disappearing into the car, me standing alone in the afternoon sun. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace. "No," I texted back. "But I will be." 3 weeks after Travis entered rehab, Maggie showed up at my apartment unannounced. She stood in my doorway, clutching her handbag like a shield, looking older than I'd ever seen her. "Were you ever going to tell me?" Her voice trembled. "About what Travis did with Robert's money." I stepped aside to let her in. "How did you find out?" "The insurance company called about some paperwork." She sank onto my couch. I started asking questions. Then I spoke to Lila. Her eyes met mine. "That poor girl. How could he?" The kettle whistled in the kitchen, giving me a moment to collect myself. When I returned with 2 cups of tea, Maggie had pulled out a stack of letters. "He's been writing to me from the facility," she said. Trying to explain. "But I need to hear it from you, Evie. All of it." So I told her everything, the gambling, the lies, the debt to Victor. With each revelation, her hands gripped the letters tighter, knuckles white against the paper. "I should have seen it," she whispered. The signs were all there, just like with his father. I nearly dropped my cup. "What? Why do you think Robert had such a large life insurance policy?" Her laugh was bitter. "He got it after his first stint in rehab, 20 years ago. Said it was to protect us if he relapsed." The pieces clicked into place, Travis's secrecy, his father's sudden heart attack last year. The way Maggie had insisted on handling all the funeral arrangements alone. Did Travis know? About his father? No. Robert made me promise never to tell him. He was afraid Travis would. She closed her eyes. Would follow the same path. My phone buzzed, a text from the rehab facility, Travis Mitchell requesting immediate family visit. Urgent. Maggie saw the message over my shoulder. "We should go together." The facility was an hour outside the city. During the drive, Maggie told me more about Robert, his struggles, his recoveries. His final relapse that led to that fatal night at a casino in Vegas. By the time we arrived, I felt the weight of 2 generations of addiction pressing down on us. Travis was waiting in the visitor's room, wearing facility-issued sweats that made him look somehow younger and older at the same time. When he saw Maggie, his face crumpled. "Mom? What are you doing here?" She stepped forward. Learning that my son is more like his father than I ever wanted him to be. Travis went pale. "What do you mean?" "The gambling, Travis. The lies. Your father." She took a shaky breath. "Your father died chasing one last win. Just like you almost did." He collapsed into a chair, hands shaking. "Dad was like me?" "No," Maggie's voice hardened. "You're like him. And I won't watch another Mitchell man destroy himself and everyone around him." "I'm getting help," Travis protested. "I'm trying to change." "Are you?" I cut in. "Or are you just trying to win me back? Like another game you think you can play?" "Evie, please." "Mom." He looked between us desperately. "I know I messed up. But I'm doing the work. I'm facing everything I've done." Then face this, Maggie pulled out one last letter, not from the stack Travis had sent, but an older one, yellowed with age. Your father wrote this before he died. I think it's time you read it. Travis took the letter with trembling hands. As he read, tears began rolling down his face. When he finished, he looked up at his mother with new understanding. He was trying to win back what he lost, Travis whispered. Just like I was. The difference is, Maggie said softly, you still have a chance to choose a different ending. I watched them embrace, mother and son united in grief and hope. In that moment, I realized that sometimes the greatest act of revenge isn't about making someone suffer, it's about forcing them to face the truth. No matter how painful that truth might be. As I turned to leave, Travis called out, Evie, wait. There's something else you need to know. 6 months after Travis entered rehab, I sat in Lila's gallery, surrounded by her new exhibition. The walls were covered with photographs, not Travis's this time, but her own. Images of broken things made beautiful, shattered mirrors, cracked pottery filled with gold, weathered buildings reclaimed by nature. It's called restoration, Lila said, handing me a glass of wine. Sometimes things have to break completely before they can be rebuilt. I studied a particularly striking image of a wedding ring half buried in sand. Is that the one Travis gave me? Yes. She smiled without bitterness. I almost threw it into the ocean, but then I thought, why waste good art material? The gallery door chimed. Maggie entered, followed by Travis. He looked different, thinner, but somehow more substantial. Real. His eyes met mine briefly before focusing on the photographs. These are incredible, Lila, he said softly. Thank you. She straightened her shoulders. The proceeds are going to a gambling addiction support center. Seemed fitting. Travis nodded, then pulled an envelope from his jacket. I've been working with my counselor on making amends. This is the first installment to repay what I took from the gallery. Lila took the envelope without opening it. Keep it. Fund someone else's recovery instead. I don't deserve your forgiveness. No, she agreed. But you have it anyway. That's how healing works. As Lila led Maggie through the exhibition, Travis turned to me. I found a job. Teaching photography at the community center. It's not much, but it's honest work. I heard, I said. Sam told me you're also volunteering at the addiction hotline. 3 nights a week. He hesitated. I got my 90-day chip yesterday. Congratulations. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. Finally, Travis pulled out another envelope, this one worn, like it had been carried for weeks. I wrote this during my 4th week in rehab, he said. After I read my dad's letter. I've rewritten it dozens of times, but... well, you should just read it. I opened the envelope slowly, aware of his eyes on me as I unfolded the pages. Dear Evie, it began. I used to think rock bottom was losing all our money, or facing Victor, or watching you walk away. But real rock bottom was realizing that I'd become my father's son in all the wrong ways. While ignoring the one lesson he tried to teach me through his death, that love isn't about winning or losing, it's about choosing, every day, to be worthy of it. The letter continued, detailing his struggles, his shame, his gradual understanding of the damage he'd caused. But it was the final paragraph that made my hands shake. I'm not asking you to take me back. I'm not even asking for forgiveness. I'm writing to tell you that you were right about everything. Your revenge wasn't making me pay the money back or forcing me into rehab. Your revenge was making me face myself, completely and honestly, for the first time in my life. And for that, I will always be grateful. I folded the letter carefully, aware of the weight of everything unsaid between us. The divorce papers are final next week, I said quietly. I know. Travis smiled sadly. You know what's strange? For the first time in my life, I'm not trying to win anything back. I'm just trying to be better. Across the gallery, Lila was showing Maggie a photograph of a broken clock, its gears scattered but glinting with possibility. The late afternoon sun caught the image, casting fractured light across the floor between Travis and me. Maybe that's the real difference between you and your father, I said. You're learning to live with the pieces, instead of trying to gamble them back together. Travis nodded, understanding in his eyes. As I turned to leave, he called out one last time. Evie? Thank you. For making me fold when you did. I paused at the door, looking back at the exhibition title, Restoration. Sometimes, I said, losing everything is the only way to find out what's worth keeping. Outside, the city was painted in sunset colors, broken and beautiful and full of possibilities. I walked toward it, leaving the gallery and Travis behind, knowing that some things need to stay broken to remind us why we choose to heal.
The text message glowed like a toxic secret on Michael's phone. 3 little dots that changed everything. Miss you already. Same time next week? I stared at those words until they burned into my retinas, my fingers hovering over the screen. Michael had left his phone on the kitchen counter, a rookie mistake for someone who'd managed to hide an affair for God knows how long. The device buzzed again, another message appearing. Last night was perfect. Better than perfect. Juliet, I told myself. Just put the phone down and walk away. But I couldn't. My hands trembled as I scrolled up, each message worse than the last. Pet names. Inside jokes. Plans for future rendezvous. The timestamps stretched back months. I set the phone down exactly where I'd found it, careful not to disturb a single thing. Then I walked to our bedroom, and sat on the edge of the bed, my legs refusing to hold me up any longer. 15 years of marriage reduced to digital evidence of betrayal. 15 years of trust shattered by a carelessly unlocked phone. The front door opened, and I heard Michael's footsteps. Jules? You home? In here, I called out, amazed at how steady my voice sounded. He appeared in the doorway, loosening his tie. There you are. Sorry I'm late. That Morrison case is killing me. He leaned down to kiss my cheek, and I fought the urge to recoil. His cologne, the same scent I'd bought him for Christmas, now felt like another lie. Rough day? I asked, watching his face for any sign, any tell. The usual. He shrugged, hanging up his suit jacket. Opposing counsel's being difficult. Nothing I can't handle. I wondered if lying came as naturally to him in court as it did at home. I was thinking about dinner, I said. Maybe that new Italian place? Can't tonight, sweetheart. I've got to review some depositions. He was already reaching for his phone. Rain check? Sure. I smiled, the muscles in my face straining. Rain check. He disappeared into his home office, and I heard him lock the door, a habit he developed over the past year. Now I knew why. My sister Sam's voice echoed in my head, You're too trusting, Jules. People aren't always what they seem. I'd defended Michael then, convinced she was just being her usual cynical self. Now her words felt prophetic. I walked to the kitchen and opened a bottle of wine, pouring myself a generous glass. The burgundy liquid swirled like blood in the crystal, and I thought about all the nights I'd waited up for him. All the late meetings and weekend depositions I'd never questioned. My phone buzzed, Sam, as if summoned by my thoughts. Hey sis, still on for lunch tomorrow? I typed back, actually, can you come over tonight? It's important. Everything okay? No, nothing was okay. Nothing would ever be okay again. But I couldn't put it in a text. Just need to talk. Be there in 30. I took another sip of wine and opened my laptop. It was time to find out exactly who had been texting my husband. Time to understand the scope of his betrayal. Time to decide what I was going to do about it. Because one thing was certain, I wasn't going to be the foolish, trusting wife anymore. Michael had taught me a valuable lesson today. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones you should trust the least. From his office, I heard him laugh softly at something on his phone. The sound made my stomach turn. Let him laugh. Let him think he's clever. Let him believe his secret is safe. I opened a new browser window and started searching. After all, knowledge is power, and right now, knowledge was the only weapon I had. Sam arrived with a bottle of tequila and that look in her eyes, the one that said she already knew something was wrong. I hadn't even opened my mouth, and she was pulling me into a fierce hug. "Spill it," she said, kicking off her boots. "And don't try to sugarcoat anything. Your text had crisis written all over it." I led her to the kitchen, where my laptop displayed the results of 2 hours of obsessive searching. Social media profiles, LinkedIn connections, event photos, digital breadcrumbs leading to one name, Nora Carter. "I need you to stay calm," I said, pouring the tequila. That's never a good start to any conversation. Sam settled onto a bar stool, her artist's hands wrapped around the glass. "Just tell me." I pulled up Michael's phone records, amazing what you can access when you know your husband's passwords. 312 calls in the past 6 months. All to the same number. Sam's eyes narrowed as she scrolled through the data. "Please tell me this isn't what I think it is." "It gets better." I showed her the text messages I'd photographed earlier. "Her name is Nora. She's a marketing executive. Married. 2 kids. Perfect life, according to Instagram." "That lying son of a..." Sam slammed her glass down. "I'm going to kill him." "Get in line." "How long?" "At least a year, maybe more." My voice cracked. I found hotel receipts going back 18 months. Sam's face darkened. "You need to confront him. Tonight. Right now. I'll go drag him out of that office myself." "No." I gripped her arm. "I'm not ready yet." "What do you mean, not ready?" "Jules, he's cheating on you. And I need to know everything before I make my move." I pulled up Nora's professional headshot, all perfect teeth and calculated warmth. "I need to understand what I'm dealing with." Sam studied my face. "You're planning something." "Maybe." "Jules." Her voice softened. "Revenge isn't going to make this hurt less. This isn't about hurting less." I closed the laptop. It's about making sure they both understand exactly what they've done. From the office, Michael's voice drifted out, another work call. Sam's hands clenched into fists. "How can you stand it?" she whispered. "Knowing he's probably talking to her right now? Because every lie he tells is one more piece of evidence." I took a long sip of tequila. "One more reason to make this count." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. But when I figure it out." I met her eyes. "I need to know if you're with me. Always." She squeezed my hand. "But promise me something." "What?" "Don't lose yourself in this. Revenge can eat you alive if you let it." Michael's office door opened, and we both tensed. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, surprise flickering across his face. "Sam. Didn't know you were coming over." "Surprise visit," she said, her smile razor sharp. Sister's night. Great. He grabbed a water bottle from the fridge. Don't let me interrupt. I've got a conference call with Shanghai in 10 minutes. At this hour? Sam's voice dripped with skepticism. Time zones, he said smoothly. You know how it is. I watched him retreat, noting how easily the lies came now. How natural he made it all seem. Shanghai, Sam muttered once he was gone. Right. I pulled out my phone and showed her one last piece of evidence, a charity gala invitation I'd found while searching. Next Saturday. Nora Carter is on the organizing committee. Understanding dawned in Sam's eyes. You're going. We're going. I smiled, and it felt dangerous. Time to meet the other woman, don't you think? Sam studied me for a long moment. You're different, she finally said. There's something in your eyes. Good different or bad different? Scary different. She poured more tequila. But maybe that's exactly what you need to be right now. In his office, Michael laughed at something, or someone, and the sound echoed through our house like a challenge. Let him laugh. Let him think he's won. I had a week to plan, and a sister who'd help me burn it all down. The Ritz-Carlton lobby gleamed with old money and discretion. I sat in a leather armchair, pretending to read a magazine while my heart hammered against my ribs. Michael had texted his usual lie about working late. But his calendar, synced to our shared home computer, showed a 3-hour block marked client dinner. 3 hours. The perfect amount of time for dinner, drinks, and whatever else happened in room 1542. I'd followed him here, watching him stride through these same doors 20 minutes ago. He hadn't even looked around, so confident in his routine, so sure of his security. The front desk had greeted him by name. My phone buzzed. Sam, you okay? I'm here. He's upstairs. Want me to come? No. I need to do this alone. I slipped my phone away as the elevator doors opened. And there she was, Nora Carter in the flesh. Sleek black dress, designer heels, wedding ring catching the light. She moved with the easy confidence of someone who'd done this before, many times before. The magazine crinkled in my white-knuckled grip as she passed within feet of me. Her perfume lingered, something expensive and French. I wondered if her husband had bought it for her, like I'd bought Michael's cologne. My camera felt heavy in my purse. I counted to 60, then stood up. The elevator ride to the 15th floor lasted an eternity. Each floor number lit up like a countdown to destruction. The hallway was empty when I stepped out. I moved quietly, following the room numbers until I found 1542. From inside came the muffled sound of laughter, her laughter. I recognized it from the charity gala videos I'd studied online. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and opened the camera. The Do Not Disturb sign mocked me from the doorknob. I stepped back, positioning myself around the corner where I could see the door but remain hidden. The wait was excruciating. Every sound made me flinch: ice machines, distant elevators, housekeeping carts. But I forced myself to stay, to witness, to document. 2 hours and 17 minutes later, the door opened. They emerged together, his hand on the small of her back. I started recording. Next week, she asked, adjusting her dress. Same time. Michael kissed her, right there in the hallway. I'll make an excuse about that Peterson case. You're getting good at excuses. I learned from the best. He smiled, that crooked smile that used to make my heart skip. Give Elliot my regards. She laughed again, and I caught it all on video, the casual cruelty, the shared jokes, the easy intimacy of long-term lovers. They parted at the elevator, careful to leave separately. Professional adulterers, practicing their craft. I waited until they were both gone before sliding down the wall to sit on the hotel's plush carpet. My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I reviewed the footage. The images were clear, damning, Michael and Nora, caught in their carefully choreographed dance of deception. A housekeeper rounded the corner, pushing her cart. She paused when she saw me. "You okay, miss?" I looked up at her, suddenly aware of how I must appear, a woman alone, sitting on the floor of a hotel hallway, trembling. "No," I said honestly. "I'm not okay at all." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Room 1542, she said quietly. "They come every week. Sometimes twice. Every week. Sometimes twice." I stood up, smoothing my clothes. "Thank you." "What will you do?" she asked. I thought about Michael's smile, Nora's laugh, their casual destruction of 2 marriages. Whatever's necessary. Back in my car, I sent the video to Sam with a single message, "I'm ready." Her reply came instantly, "Tell me what you need." What I needed was to make them feel this hollow ache, this burning shame. I needed them to understand that actions have consequences, that betrayal leaves scars. I started the engine, my mind already racing ahead to the charity gala. To Nora's perfect facade and carefully curated life. To all the ways it could shatter. Sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold. Sometimes it needs to burn. The coffee shop was 3 blocks from Elliott Carter's high school, and I'd chosen it carefully. Close enough to seem accidental, far enough that his wife wouldn't typically venture here. I nursed my 3rd latte, watching the door, wondering if this was crossing a line I couldn't uncross. He walked in at exactly 3:45, just as his school's website indicated his last class would end. The man my husband's mistress went home to every night looked nothing like I'd imagined, kind eyes, slightly rumpled sweater. A stack of papers under his arm. I waited until he had his coffee before accidentally bumping into him near the cream and sugar station. "Oh, I'm so sorry," I said, helping him gather the scattered papers. AP English essays, I noticed. Red marks dotted the margins with encouraging comments. "No harm done." He smiled, and something twisted in my chest. "Though I think you got some coffee on Shakespeare. Let me buy you another one to make up for it." "That's really not necessary." "I insist. I'm Juliet. Elliot." He shifted the papers. "Actually, I could use a break from grading these." We sat at a corner table, and I watched him doctor his coffee with 2 sugars, just like in the photos Nora posted of their morning routine. #blessed, #perfect husband, #soulmates. "You're a teacher?" I asked, though I knew everything about him already. "English department at St. Mark's. Going on 15 years now. You must love it." "Most days." He grinned. Though sometimes I wonder if the kids are actually reading the books or just using ChatGPT. I laughed, and it felt genuine, the first real laugh in days. "Your wife must be proud of your dedication." "Nora?" Something flickered across his face, a shadow I recognized. "She's busy these days. Marketing executive, you know how it is. Always another meeting, another client dinner." Client dinner. The same excuse Michael used. "Must be hard," I said softly. "All those late nights. You get used to it." He stirred his coffee, though the sugar had long dissolved. "Sometimes I think But no, that's not fair to her. She works hard. And you're a good husband for understanding. His smile turned sad. Am I? Sometimes I wonder if understanding is just another word for willful blindness. The bell above the door chimed, and we both looked up. A woman walked in, blonde, elegant, about Nora's age. Elliot's shoulders tensed before relaxing when he saw it wasn't her. You should come to the charity gala next weekend, he said suddenly. Nora's organizing it. It's for the school's scholarship fund. My heart stuttered. Oh, I couldn't. Please? It'd be nice to have someone to talk to who actually wants to discuss books instead of networking. He pulled out an invitation. Bring your husband. I took the embossed card, my fingers trembling slightly. That's very kind. Besides, he added quietly, maybe you can help me figure out if I'm just being paranoid. Our eyes met, and in that moment, I saw everything he wasn't saying. The suspicions. The sleepless nights. The carefully maintained denial. Sometimes, I heard myself say, paranoia is just intuition wearing a fancy name tag. He nodded slowly, understanding passing between us like a current. You know something. It wasn't a question. I stood up, suddenly unable to breathe. I should go. Juliet. His voice stopped me. Whatever you know. Whatever you're planning. Remember, there's more than one person who'll get hurt. I looked back at him, this decent man with his red pen and kind eyes, marking papers and waiting up for a wife who was in another man's bed. Sometimes, I said, the truth hurts less than the lies we tell ourselves. I left him there, clutching his cooling coffee, the invitation burning in my purse like a loaded gun. Sam was right, revenge wasn't simple. It wasn't clean. And now I had a choice to make, protect an innocent man or burn it all down. My phone buzzed, Michael, asking what I wanted for dinner. I ignored it, staring instead at the invitation. The gala was in 3 days. 3 days to decide if justice was worth the collateral damage. 3 days to decide what kind of person I really was. The gala invitation sat on my desk like a loaded weapon while I scrolled through Nora Carter's perfectly curated life. Each photo was a masterclass in deception, family vacations, date nights with Elliot, motivational quotes about loyalty and success. The timestamp on one caught my eye, posted the same afternoon she'd been with Michael at the Ritz. My phone buzzed. Sam, you sure about this? I clicked another photo, Nora at last year's gala, champagne flute in hand, Michael barely visible in the background. How many times had they exchanged glances across crowded rooms, playing their secret game? Jules? I found something, I typed back. Come over. Sam arrived 20 minutes later, carrying Chinese takeout and concern. I turned my laptop screen toward her. Look at the comments. She leaned in, reading. From the real MCT, stunning as always. That's Michael. 3 years ago. Before he even made partner at the firm. I pulled up more photos, more comments. He's been hiding in plain sight, leaving breadcrumbs all over her social media. Jesus. Sam set down her chopsticks. They weren't even trying to hide it. Because they thought nobody was looking. I opened another tab. But that's not the best part. Look at her company's website. The marketing firm's leadership page showed Nora in her executive headshot. Below it, a list of major clients. Including Michael's law firm. She helped land their account 2 years ago, I said. Probably how they met. So it's not just an affair, it's a potential ethics violation. Sam's eyes widened. If the firm found out, they'd both lose everything. The thought should have satisfied me. Instead, it left me cold. But so would Elliot. The teacher? Jules, you can't protect everyone. He invited me to the gala. Asked me to help him figure out if he was being paranoid. I pushed away from the desk. You should have seen his face, Sam. He knows something's wrong, but he can't let himself believe it. Like you couldn't? The words hit like a slap. I stood up, pacing. This isn't about me. Isn't it? Sam followed me. You're obsessing over this woman's life, planning this elaborate revenge. When was the last time you actually dealt with how you feel? I feel fine. Really? Because you look like you haven't slept in days. The doorbell rang before I could respond. Through the window, I saw Michael's car in the driveway, home early for once. Hide this, I hissed, closing the laptop. Act normal. Michael walked in as Sam was gathering the takeout containers. Ladies' night again? Just catching up, Sam said, her voice carefully neutral. I was just leaving. Stay, he said. I brought work home, but I'd love to hear what you two are up to. The casual line made my stomach turn. I watched him head upstairs to change, wondering how many times he'd said those exact words before meeting Nora. I can't keep doing this, I whispered once he was gone. Pretending everything's normal while they. Then don't. Sam gripped my shoulders. Confront him. Tell him what you know. Or better yet, tell Elliot. Let him be the one to blow it all up. No. I pulled away. The gala's in 2 days. Everyone will be there, the firm's partners, Nora's clients, their whole social circle. I picked up the invitation. If they want to play happy couples in public, let's give them a show they'll never forget. Jules. I've made up my mind. Sam studied me for a long moment. You know what scares me? I can't tell if you're trying to get justice or just trying to hurt them as much as they hurt you. Maybe there's no difference anymore. Upstairs, I heard Michael on the phone, another work call, no doubt. Another lie in an endless chain of deceptions. Sam gathered her things, pausing at the door. Just remember what you said about Elliot. About collateral damage. I remember. And? I looked at the invitation again, at Nora's name in elegant script. Sometimes you have to break things to fix them. Sam left, and I stood alone in my kitchen, listening to my husband lie to his lover while planning their next meeting. 2 days until the gala. 2 days until I turned their perfect world upside down. Let them have their secrets for now. Soon enough, everyone would know the truth. The grand ballroom of the Riverside Hotel sparkled with champagne flutes and fake smiles. I adjusted my black dress, borrowed from Sam, who'd called 3 times already to ask if I was sure about this. I'd stopped answering after the second call. The USB drive in my clutch felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. 3 minutes of video, dozens of photos, and a detailed timeline of meetings, hotel receipts, and social media breadcrumbs. Everything needed to destroy 2 marriages and at least 1 career. Nora commanded the room from a raised platform, perfect in her designer gown, introducing the evening's charitable cause. Behind her, a massive screen displayed the school's logo. The same screen that would soon show something very different. Juliet. Elliot appeared beside me, genuine warmth in his smile. You came. Is your husband here? He's running late. Another lie to add to the pile. Michael had left hours ago, claiming he needed to review contracts before Monday. Nora's been so stressed about tonight. Elliot watched his wife with obvious pride. Biggest fundraiser of the year. My fingers tightened around my clutch. She seems to handle pressure well. That's my girl. He beamed as Nora finished her speech to enthusiastic applause. Listen, would you mind if I introduced you? She'd love to meet another professional woman who... Elliot. My voice cracked. Don't. He turned, confusion crossing his face. What's wrong? Before I could respond, I saw Michael slip into the ballroom through a side door. He caught Nora's eye across the room, and something passed between them, a look so intimate it made my stomach turn. I need some air, I muttered, pushing through the crowd toward the terrace. The night air hit my face like a slap. I gripped the stone balustrade, trying to steady my breathing. Below, the hotel's gardens stretched into darkness, and I wondered if I could just walk away. Disappear into the night and leave them to their lies. Jules? I froze. Michael stood in the doorway, champagne in hand. What are you doing here? Elliot invited me. I turned, studying my husband's face. Surprised? He shifted uncomfortably. I thought you had deadlines this weekend. Funny. I thought you had contracts to review. Something flickered in his eyes, recognition, maybe fear. Before he could respond, Nora appeared behind him. Michael, the senior partners want, oh. She stopped short, perfect smile faltering for just a moment. I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Nora, this is my wife, Juliet. Michael's voice was steady, practiced. Jules, this is Nora Carter, our marketing consultant. We shook hands, both of us wearing masks that felt paper thin. Her perfume, the same scent from the hotel hallway, made me want to scream. Your husband speaks so highly of you, she lied smoothly. Funny, he's never mentioned you. The tension crackled between us like static electricity. Inside, the MC was announcing the evening's presentation. We should get back, Michael said quickly. The partners. Of course. I smiled, all teeth. Don't let me keep you. They retreated together, not quite touching but moving in perfect synchronization. Through the glass doors, I saw Elliot watching them, a small frown creasing his forehead. My phone buzzed. Sam again, please don't do this. I looked at the USB drive, then at the happy couples mingling inside. At Michael and Nora, playing their parts to perfection. At Elliot, still watching with growing confusion. The MC's voice boomed through the speakers, and now, a special presentation about our scholarship program. My hand tightened around the drive. One upload and it would all come crashing down. The affair, the business connection, the years of lies, all of it exposed on that massive screen for everyone to see. But Elliot's kind eyes haunted me. The way he'd talked about books over coffee. The pride in his voice when he spoke about his students. The MC was calling for the tech team to start the presentation. It was now or never. I looked down at the garden again, at the darkness that promised escape. Then I straightened my shoulders and walked back inside, clutch held tight against my racing heart. Sometimes the worst revenge isn't what you do to others, it's what you force them to do to themselves. I found them in the hotel's conservatory, away from the crowd. Michael's hand rested on Nora's lower back as they whispered together, their faces close. The USB drive felt heavy in my hand as I stepped into the moonlit space. Don't let me interrupt. They jumped apart like guilty teenagers. Michael's tie was slightly askew, the same tie I'd bought him for our anniversary last year. Jules, he started. 3 years. My voice sounded strange even to me. 3 years of lies, and you couldn't even pick a different hotel. Nora's perfect composure cracked. How did you? Room 1542. Every Thursday. Sometimes Tuesdays. I moved closer, watching their faces. The housekeeper remembers you both. She was very helpful. Michael stepped forward. We can explain. Can you explain the firm's ethics policy on sleeping with marketing executives who handle their accounts? I turned to Nora. Or should we ask your board of directors about that? The color drained from her face. You wouldn't. I have everything. I held up the drive. The hotel receipts. The messages. The timeline of meetings that mysteriously aligned with your business relationship. One email to the right people and... Stop. Michael's voice shook. Please, just... Stop. Why should I? You didn't stop when I needed you. When I was waiting up nights, believing your lies about work. I looked at Nora. Did he tell you I miscarried last year? While you were together in that hotel room, I was losing our baby alone. Nora flinched. I didn't know. Of course you didn't. Because you only saw what you wanted to see. Both of you. Footsteps echoed from the hallway. We all turned as Elliot appeared in the doorway, confusion etched on his face. Nora? The presentation's about to, what's going on? The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. I watched Nora's perfect mask slip back into place, watched her reach for another lie. Nothing, honey. Just discussing the fundraiser. Don't. My voice cut. Moved between us, understanding dawning slowly. Juliet. I held out the USB drive. Everything you've been afraid to ask about is on here. Every late night. Every business trip. Every lie. Michael lunged for the drive, but I stepped back. Jules, think about what you're doing. I have thought about it. For weeks, I've thought about nothing else. I turned to Elliot. I'm sorry. You deserved better than this. Nora made a small, broken sound. Please. My children. Should have been reason enough to stop. I placed the drive in Elliot's trembling hand. The truth hurts less than the lies we tell ourselves. Someone wise told me that recently. Elliot stared at the drive, then at his wife. How long? Neither Michael nor Nora could meet his eyes. The answer hung in the air between us all. I'll save you the trouble of more lies. I moved toward the door. 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. But who's counting? Jules, wait, Michael reached for me. I pulled away. Don't touch me. Don't call me. Don't try to explain. I met his eyes one last time. The divorce papers will be on your desk Monday morning. Behind me, I heard Nora begin to cry, heard Elliot's quiet, devastated questions. But I didn't look back. I walked through the ballroom, past the curious glances and whispered conversations, out into the cool night air. Sam was waiting in her car, just like she promised. One look at my face and she opened her arms. Did you do it? I collapsed into the passenger seat, suddenly exhausted. I gave the drive to Elliot. Better than showing everyone at the gala? This way. I closed my eyes. This way they have to face what they've done. No public scandal to hide behind. Just the truth, finally. Sam started the car. Where to? I thought about our house, filled with 15 years of memories and lies. About Michael's clothes in our closet, his toothbrush by our sink. Anywhere but home. The coffee shop where I'd first met Elliot looked different in the morning light. Or maybe I was the one who'd changed. I traced the rim of my cup, watching the door, wondering if he'd come. He did. Same rumpled sweater, same stack of papers under his arm. Different eyes though, older somehow, wearier. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. "I wasn't sure you'd want to." Neither was I. He ordered coffee, 2 sugars, just like before. Nora moved out yesterday. I heard. The divorce announcements had made several legal blogs. Michael's firm had quietly asked for his resignation the week before. "I'm sorry about the children. They're resilient. More than we give them credit for." He pulled something from his bag, the USB drive. I watched it all. Multiple times, actually. Kept thinking maybe I'd missed something, some warning sign. We see what we want to see. Until we can't anymore. He set the drive between us like a boundary marker. The funny thing is, I'd convinced myself I was paranoid. That I was imagining things. Then you walked into this coffee shop. I never meant to. Yes, you did. His voice was gentle but firm. You knew exactly what you were doing. And I'm grateful. That stopped me. Grateful? For the truth. Even though it hurt. Even though it destroyed everything I thought I knew. He smiled sadly. Sometimes destruction is necessary for rebuilding. The barista called out another order, and we both jumped slightly. The normal world felt strange now, after everything. "I got a job offer," I said. "Design firm in Chicago. Fresh start. You'll take it?" "I think so." I looked around the coffee shop, at all the lives intersecting and diverging. There's nothing holding me here anymore. Except Sam. She's threatening to follow me. I smiled despite myself. Says she needs new inspiration for her art anyway. Elliot nodded, then reached into his bag again. "I have something for you." He pulled out a book, The Great Gatsby. Light reading for dark times? Open it. Inside, he'd written, "Sometimes we tell ourselves stories to survive. But the truth, however painful, sets us free. Thank you for my freedom. I don't deserve. You do." He stood up, gathering his papers. "We all deserve the truth, Juliet. Even when it breaks us." After he left, I sat there for a long time, holding the book, thinking about stories and truth and freedom. My phone buzzed, a text from Michael. Another apology, another plea for conversation. I deleted it without reading. The bell above the door chimed, and Sam walked in, her artist's smock splattered with fresh paint. "Ready?" she asked. "For what?" "Adventure. Change. Life." She grinned. "I found us an apartment in Chicago. 2 bedrooms, great light, walking distance to your new office and the best art district in the city." "Us? You really think I'd let you do this alone?" She sat down, stealing a sip of my coffee. "Besides, I hear Chicago has much better dating options than our cheating ex-husbands." "Sam. Too soon?" I looked at Gatsby on the table, at Elliot's words about freedom. at my sister's paint-stained hands and fierce, protective love. Actually, I said, it's perfect timing. Sam smiled, pulling out her phone to show me apartment photos. As she talked about exposed brick and natural lighting, I thought about Nora and Michael, about lies and consequences. About the stories we tell ourselves to survive. But mostly, I thought about tomorrow, and all the blank pages waiting to be filled. I picked up Gatsby, tucking it into my bag alongside the job offer and apartment listings. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone else's story, it's about finally being brave enough to write your own. So, Sam said, eyes bright with possibility, when do we start? I looked at my sister, my constant, my compass, my co-conspirator in both revenge and redemption. We already have.
The phone slipped from my fingers, hitting the kitchen counter with a sharp crack. Those 3 little dots kept pulsing on Connor's screen, taunting me with their rhythmic dance. Someone was typing, deleting, typing again. I shouldn't have looked. Shouldn't have noticed the notification. Shouldn't have touched his phone at all. I'm Addison, and until 30 seconds ago, I thought I knew what trust meant. Mom? Everything okay? Chloe's voice drifted down from upstairs, probably hearing the clatter of the phone. Fine, honey. Just drop something. My voice stayed steady, a teacher's practiced control. 16 years of marriage, and here I was, hands trembling over a text message that read, "Same time tonight? I'll wear that thing you like." The message disappeared before my eyes, deleted. Of course. Connor always was meticulous about covering his tracks. Even the way he arranged his shoes by the door, perfectly aligned, spoke of someone who liked things just so. Need help with dinner? Chloe appeared in the doorway, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, Connor's eyes staring back at me from her face. The similarity made my stomach turn. Actually, yes. I needed a witness, someone to ground me in reality. Could you chop these onions? She moved beside me, our elbows touching as we worked. The kitchen filled with the sharp scent of onions, masking the acid taste of bile rising in my throat. Dad working late again? Her knife tapped steadily against the cutting board. Bars busy on Thursdays. The lie came easily, practiced over months of similar conversations. But now the words felt like glass in my mouth. My phone buzzed. Connor. Traffic's terrible. Don't wait up. Chloe peered over my shoulder. 3rd Thursday this month. I looked at her sharply. She'd been counting. Mason noticed too, she added, scraping onions into the pot. He pretends not to, but he does. The front door opened, and Mason's backpack hit the floor with its usual thud. His footsteps dragged toward the kitchen, heavy with teenage exhaustion. Dad working late? He asked, reaching for an apple. Chloe's knife paused mid-chop. The silence stretched until I forced words through numb lips. Yes, honey. The bar's busy. Mason bit into his apple, eyes fixed on something distant. Weird. I walked past there after practice. Place looked pretty dead. The wooden spoon in my hand snapped. Both kids stared at the broken pieces. Mom? Chloe's voice was careful, measured. It's nothing. I tossed the splintered wood into the trash. Just old. Everything gets old eventually, doesn't it? Mason disappeared upstairs, but Chloe lingered, her presence both comfort and witness to my unraveling. You know, she said, voice low, Aunt Rachel mentioned this guy, Peter something. He's good at finding things out. Things people want to keep hidden. My hands stilled over the stove. Your aunt talks too much. Maybe. Chloe shrugged. Or maybe she talks just enough. I turned to face my daughter, really looking at her. When had she grown so perceptive? So strong? Sometimes, she continued, the worst part isn't what you find out. It's pretending you don't already know. The timer buzzed, making us both jump. Dinner would be ready soon, a meal for 3 instead of 4. Again. I picked up Connor's phone, still lying where it fell. The screen had cracked, a spider web of lines distorting his lock screen, our family photo from last summer's vacation. All of us smiling, none of us seeing the fractures already forming. Mom? Chloe touched my arm. What are you going to do? I placed the broken phone exactly where Connor always left it, aligned perfectly with the counter's edge. I'm going to serve dinner. And then I'm going to make a phone call. To Peter. To Peter. The decision settled in my chest like a stone. Because you're right, honey. The pretending has to stop. Peter's office smelled like old coffee and secrets. The leather chair creaked under me as I pulled out Connor's credit card statements, copies I'd made while he slept. My hands didn't shake anymore. That was new. These are from the last 6 months, I said, spreading them across Peter's desk. Notice anything? He adjusted his reading glasses, weathered fingers tracing the lines of numbers. The Chandler Hotel. Every Thursday. He glanced up. Expensive taste. We've never stayed there. The words tasted bitter. Not once in 16 years. Peter nodded, his silence more telling than words. I'd known him since before Connor, back when he'd helped my sister through her divorce. Now here I was, following her footsteps. My phone buzzed. Connor. Running late tonight. Business meeting. Of course you are, I muttered, switching the phone off. Have you confronted him? Peter gathered the statements into a neat pile. Not yet. The door opened, cutting me off. Jenna stood in the doorway, her college backpack slung over one shoulder. Uncle Peter, I brought those files you, oh. Her eyes widened. Aunt Addison. The room suddenly felt too small. Jenna, my niece, Connor's part-time bartender, the girl who'd practically grown up in our house, shifted uncomfortably. Just dropping off some paperwork, I said, too quickly. For the school fundraiser. Right. Jenna's laugh was nervous, high-pitched. I should go. My shift at the bar starts soon. Thursday night. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Must be busy. Something flickered across her face, guilt? Fear? She practically fled the office. Peter watched her go, his expression unreadable. That's interesting. What is? The bar's closed on Thursdays. Has been for months. Renovation work. The room tilted sideways. I gripped the edge of his desk, knuckles white. Connor told me. He said. I know what he said. Peter's voice was gentle. Question is, what are you going to do about it? My phone lit up again, Chloe. Mom, Dad's home early. He's asking questions about where you are. I stood, gathering the statements. I need proof. Real proof. Addison. Peter's tone made me pause. Be careful. Sometimes the truth is worse than we imagine. At home, Connor was in the kitchen, cooking. He only cooked when he felt guilty. Where were you? His smile was perfect, practiced. I tried calling. Parent-teacher conferences. The lie came easily now. You know how it is. He nodded, stirring something that smelled like garlic and deception. Jenna's coming for dinner. Thought it would be nice, family time. My heart stopped. Jenna? Yeah, she seemed upset earlier. Said she could use some family support. Chloe appeared in the doorway, her eyes finding mine. I invited Mason's friend over too. For support. Connor's spatula paused mid-stir. What friend? Jake. His dad's a lawyer. Chloe's voice was innocent, but her message was clear. She was building witnesses. The more the merrier, I said, matching Connor's smile with one of my own. Two could play at this game of perfect families. Later, as everyone gathered around the dinner table, I watched how Jenna wouldn't meet my eyes. How Connor's hand shook slightly as he passed the bread. How Mason kept looking between them, picking up on the tension none of us would name. "So, Jenna," I said, cutting into my chicken. "How's work at the bar?" "Good." She stabbed a piece of broccoli. "Quiet on Thursdays." Connor's fork clattered against his plate. Chloe kicked me under the table, a warning or encouragement, I couldn't tell. "Funny," Mason said, "since it's closed for renovations." The silence that followed was deafening. Connor recovered first. Different sections, different days. You know how construction goes. But the crack was there, visible now. In his voice, in Jenna's rigid posture, in the way everyone at the table suddenly found their plates fascinating. I stood, gathering empty glasses. "Who wants dessert?" I made Connor's favorite. "Actually," Jenna pushed back her chair, "I should go." "But you've barely eaten," Connor protested. Our eyes met across the table, and for a moment, I saw fear in his. He knew. He knew that I knew. "Stay, Jenna," I said softly. "Family should stick together, don't you think?" The timer in the kitchen went off, shrill and insistent. Someone had to break first. It was just a matter of time. The Chandler Hotel receipt burned in my pocket as I walked through its marble lobby. Everything gleamed, the floors, the fixtures, the fake smiles of the staff. The kind of place that charged extra for secrets. "Can I help you?" The receptionist's nameplate read, "Sarah." "I hope so." I slid my driver's license across the counter. "My husband's been staying here." "Connor Walsh?" "I need a copy of his latest bill for our tax records." Sarah's fingers hesitated over her keyboard. "I'm sorry, but we can't." "Please." I leaned closer, lowering my voice. "I found charges on our credit card. If there's been fraud, I need to report it." Her expression shifted, sympathy, maybe recognition. She'd probably seen this scene before. One moment. She typed, then frowned. "That's odd. The charges are under a different name, but the card matches your husband's." My throat tightened. "What name?" "James Peterson." She turned the screen. "Room 412, every Thursday for the past 3 months. James Peterson. Connor's grandfather's name. The man he'd always said he wanted to honor." "There's a standing reservation for this Thursday," Sarah added. "Shall I print the details?" I nodded, numb. The printer hummed, spitting out paper that felt like sandpaper in my hands. My phone buzzed. "Peter. Got something. Meet me at the bar." The bar was dark, closed for renovations, that showed no sign of progress. Peter waited in his car across the street. "Look at this." He handed me a manila envelope. Inside were photos, Connor entering the hotel, Jenna following 20 minutes later. Both carrying overnight bags. "When?" "Last Thursday." Peter's voice was gentle. "There's more." The next photo showed Connor at an ATM, withdrawing cash. Then at a jewelry store, emerging with a small bag. "The bracelet," I whispered. "The one Jenna had been wearing at dinner." "Addison." Peter touched my arm. "The hotel receipts, the jewelry, it's not the whole story. Look at the last photo." It was grainy, taken through a window. Connor and Jenna at a table, papers spread between them. One looked like a passport. "He's planning something," Peter said. "Something bigger than an affair." My phone lit up. "Connor. Working late again." "Don't wait up." I looked at the hotel reservation in my hand. 3 hours from now, room 412. I need to see that room. Peter's eyes widened. "Addison, don't." Sarah will help me. My voice sounded strange, distant. She understands. The hotel key card felt heavy in my hand. Sarah had barely hesitated when I explained. Another woman who knew the taste of betrayal. Room 412 was pristine, waiting for its Thursday guests. I moved through it like a ghost, touching nothing, seeing everything. 2 water glasses by the bed. A forgotten hair tie on the bathroom counter. Jenna's brand. The closet door was ajar. Inside, a small safe stood open. Empty, except for a folded paper that had slipped behind it. My hands shook as I retrieved it. A bank statement from the Cayman Islands. Connor's grandfather's name again, but recent dates. Large deposits. My phone buzzed again. Chloe, Mom, where are you? Dad came home, but left again. He's acting weird. Then Mason, Mom, I heard Dad on the phone. Something about tickets. And finally Peter, get out of there. Now. Footsteps in the hallway. Keys jingling. I slipped into the bathroom, heart pounding. The door opened. You're early. Connor's voice. Had to make sure everything was ready. Jenna. Tickets are confirmed. Once the transfer clears next week, we're gone. What about Addison? The kids? A pause. They'll be fine. The divorce papers are ready. She'll get the house, enough money to keep quiet. She's not stupid, Connor. She knows something's wrong. By the time she figures it out, we'll be gone. 3 million buys a lot of distance. I pressed my hand against my mouth, stifling a laugh or a scream. 3 million. Our life reduced to a number. My phone buzzed silently. Peter again, police are on their way. Anonymous tip about fraud. Stay hidden. Through the bathroom door, I heard champagne being poured. Celebrations beginning. Endings too. I touched the bank statement in my pocket. Sometimes the worst betrayals aren't about the heart at all. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. In the other room, glasses clinked together in a toast to futures that would never come. The police station hummed with fluorescent lights and half-truths. I sat across from Detective Morris, the Cayman Islands bank statement between us, while Connor spent his first night in a holding cell. $3 million, Morris said, tapping the paper. That's a lot of renovation money. Funny how expensive lies can be. My voice didn't shake anymore. That should have scared me. Mrs. Walsh, we'll need you to sign these statements. He slid papers across his desk. But there's something else you should know. A knock interrupted us. Jenna stood in the doorway, wearing that damned bracelet. Her eyes were red, mascara smudged. I'm ready to talk, she said. Morris nodded. Have a seat. I stood to leave, but Jenna caught my arm. Stay. Please. You need to hear this. The bracelet glinted under the harsh lights. Connor's grandfather's name echoed in my head, James Peterson. A dead man's identity used to steal from the living. The money, Jenna started, then stopped. Swallowed. It wasn't just from the bar. Morris leaned forward. Go on. Connor. He's been running something bigger. The bar was just a front. She twisted the bracelet around her wrist. I thought I was helping with bookkeeping, but then I saw the real numbers. My phone buzzed. Chloe, Mom, there are people at the house. They're asking about Dad's business partners. Then Mason, Mom, they're taking Dad's computers. Mrs. Walsh. Morris was watching me. Your children are safe. We have officers there. Jenna's voice cracked. I'm so sorry, Aunt Addison. He said if I didn't help, he'd tell everyone about the accident. What accident? She pulled up her sleeve. Above the bracelet, a long scar traced her forearm. Last year, at the bar. A customer got rough. Connor. He handled it. Said he'd protect me, but then he started asking for favors. The room tilted sideways. Connor, my Connor, who color-coded his sock drawer and remembered every anniversary. Who apparently buried bodies and laundered money. The hotel meetings, I said, were for business. Jenna's laugh was hollow. The kind you can't do in broad daylight. Morris spread out more papers. We've traced connections to 3 other establishments. All using the same pattern. My phone lit up again. Peter, don't react. Connor made bail. His brother posted it. The brother we hadn't spoken to in 5 years. The one Connor said was trouble. Detective, my voice was steady, I need protection for my children. Already arranged. He gestured to an officer. We'll have someone escort you. No. Jenna stood abruptly. You can't go home. Connor has a backup plan. He always has a backup plan. The bracelet caught the light again, and suddenly I understood. It's not just jewelry, is it? She unclasped it, handed it to Morris. Look inside the links. The detective examined it under a magnifying glass. USB drives. Clever. Everything's there, Jenna whispered. Every transaction, every name. He gave it to me as insurance, but really it was a trap. If anything happened, I'd go down too. My phone buzzed one final time, an unknown number. You have no idea what you've started. Connor's voice, even in text, was perfectly controlled. Like his sock drawer. Like his lies. Detective, I stood, gathering my coat, I need to make a call. In the hallway, I dialed Chloe. Pack bags for you and Mason. Peter's coming to get you. Mom? Her voice was small. Are we ever coming back? I watched through the window as Morris bagged the bracelet, proof of both corruption and corruption's cure. Not until it's safe. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass. Not until I finish what your father started. Behind me, Jenna approached, her wrist bare where the bracelet had been. I want to help. For real this time. I turned to face her, seeing not my niece but a mirror, another woman trapped in Connor's web, looking for redemption. Then help me understand, I said. Everything. Because sometimes, the only way to end a story is to go back to its beginning. Even if that beginning was built on graves we never knew we were dancing on. Peter's safe house smelled like dust and old promises. I watched the surveillance feed on his laptop, my children asleep in the next room. On screen, Connor paced his office at the bar, phone pressed to his ear. The cameras were Jenna's idea, Peter said, adjusting the volume. She planted them yesterday. The audio crackled. Connor's voice filled the room. No, listen. The police don't have everything. The bracelet's just insurance. Yes, I know what happens if, don't threaten me. Jenna sat beside me, her bare wrist a reminder of what we'd given up. There's more coming. Watch. On screen, Connor's brother Marcus entered the frame. The prodigal son, returned at last. You promised this would be clean, Marcus said. Now the cops are crawling everywhere. Addison doesn't know the whole story. Connor's laugh was ugly. She thinks it's just about money and a cheap affair. Let her. My fingers curled into fists. Beside me, Jenna tensed. And the kids? Marcus asked. Leverage, if I need it. Connor straightened his perfectly pressed shirt. Addison won't risk them. The laptop screen cracked under my grip. Peter gently pried my hands away. Mom? Chloe stood in the doorway, Mason behind her. They'd heard everything. Go pack, I said. We're leaving. No. Chloe moved closer, eyes fixed on the screen. We're done running. On the feed, Connor pulled out a familiar leather notebook, my grandmother's diary, the one thing I'd saved from my childhood home. See this? Connor waved it at Marcus. Everything we need is in here. The old property deeds, the original contracts. Once we have those, the development deal goes through, Marcus finished. And the money gets cleaned through the construction. Perfect crime. My grandmother's land. The acres of forest she'd protected, that I'd inherited. That Connor had been trying to get me to sign over for months. He can't access it without your signature, Peter said quietly. No. I watched Connor slide the diary into his safe. But he can make me sign. Jenna stood abruptly. I need to go back. What? No. The word came out sharp. He trusts me now. Thinks I'm terrified of the police finding out about everything. She touched her scarred arm. I can get into that safe. It's too dangerous. But even as I said it, I knew she was right. Mason stepped forward, his quiet voice steady. Dad always said I was just like him. Maybe it's time to use that. What do you mean? He'll expect me to come home. The dutiful son, worried about his father. His smile was pure Connor. I can distract him while Jenna gets the diary. Absolutely not. But Chloe was already nodding. I'll create a scene at school, she said. He'll have to come deal with it. Administrative emergency, parent conference. You've all lost your minds. I looked at Peter for support, but he was studying the surveillance feed thoughtfully. It could work, he said. With the right timing. On screen, Connor opened another bottle of whiskey, his movements precise even in destruction. Just like everything else he'd torn apart. My phone buzzed. Detective Morris, Connor's brother, made some interesting calls. You need to move. Now. Another message followed, and Mrs. Walsh? Whatever you're planning. Make it count. I looked at my children, seeing not victims but warriors. At Jenna, no longer the manipulated niece but a survivor seeking redemption. At Peter, who'd watched my sister's destruction and wouldn't let history repeat. Tomorrow, I said finally. We do it tomorrow. And then? Chloe asked. I watched Connor on screen, drinking to victories he hadn't won yet. Then we take everything. Not just the diary or the evidence. Everything. Because sometimes revenge isn't about destruction. Sometimes it's about reconstruction, building something stronger from the ashes of what was burned. Mom? Mason's voice was soft. Are we bad people for doing this? No, honey. I pulled him close, feeling Chloe and Jenna join the embrace. We're just finally playing by his rules. On the laptop, Connor raised his glass in a silent toast, unaware that his perfect plan was about to meet its perfect destruction. The plan fell apart like everything else in my life, quickly and without mercy. I stood in Connor's office, my grandmother's diary clutched to my chest, while Mason lay unconscious on the floor. The cut above his eye still bled. Sit down, Addison. Connor's voice was silk over steel. The gun in his hand didn't waver. He's 14, I whispered. He's your son. He's a liability. Like mother, like son. He gestured to the chair. Now sit. Through the office window, I could see Jenna being led away by Marcus, her attempt to crack the safe having failed spectacularly. Chloe's diversionary tactic at school had only bought us minutes, not the hours we'd needed. The diary. Connor held out his free hand. Unless you want Mason to wake up with more than just a headache. My fingers traced the worn leather cover. Inside were the property deeds, the contracts, my grandmother's legacy. And now, Connor's ticket to millions. You never loved me, did you? The question surprised us both. His laugh was familiar, yet strange. I loved what you represented. The perfect wife, the perfect cover. He stepped closer. Sign the papers, and this ends quietly. Like that customer at the bar. The one Jenna told me about. Something flickered in his eyes. She should have kept her mouth shut. Like you kept quiet about the money laundering. The development deals. Careful, darling. The gun shifted toward Mason. You're not the only one with evidence. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Peter's signal, the police were in position. I just needed to keep Connor talking. Why Jenna? The question had haunted me for weeks. Because she was easy. Vulnerable. Just like you were, 16 years ago. His smile turned cruel. Remember? The grieving teacher, so lost after her grandmother's death. So eager for someone to take control. Mason stirred, groaning. Connor's finger tightened on the trigger. The papers, Addison. Now. I placed the diary on his desk, opened it to the marked page. My hands didn't shake as I picked up the pen. That's my girl. Connor's voice dripped satisfaction. Always so. The window exploded inward. Connor fired, once, twice. I threw myself over Mason as glass rained down. Police. Drop the weapon. But Connor was already moving, grabbing the diary with one hand, shooting with the other. I heard Peter shout, heard returning fire. Then silence. I lifted my head. Connor was gone, taking the diary with him. Blood stained the carpet where I knelt, Mason's, mine, maybe both. Mom? Mason's eyes fluttered open. Did we get it? I helped him sit up, checking his wound. No, baby. We didn't. But I saw Jenna. He winced. Before Dad hit me. She had something in her hand. Peter burst through the door, gun drawn. Addison. Are you? He's gone. I pressed my sleeve against Mason's cut. He has the diary. Peter holstered his weapon, a strange smile playing at his lips. Does he? From his jacket, he pulled out familiar worn leather. My grandmother's diary. How? The one Connor took was a copy. Jenna appeared in the doorway, Marcus notably absent. We switched them last week. The real documents are safe. But the safe. My head spun. The plan was exactly what Connor expected. Peter helped Mason to his feet. So we gave him what he wanted to see. Through the broken window, sirens wailed. Connor would be running, thinking he had won. Thinking he had destroyed me one final time. Mom? Mason leaned against me. What happens now? I opened the diary, passed the property deeds to the last page. There, in my grandmother's handwriting, was a name I hadn't seen in years. A name Connor didn't know about. Now, I said, we finish this. For real. Because sometimes rock bottom isn't where you end. Sometimes it's where you finally see the truth, not just about others, but about yourself. And what I saw was crystal clear. Connor hadn't married a victim 16 years ago. He'd married a survivor. He just didn't know it yet. The Chandler Hotel's penthouse suite looked different in daylight. Colder. Like Connor's smile as he watched me enter, his fake diary still clutched in his hand. I wondered how long it would take you to find me. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey. Always the perfect host. Where's Marcus? Gone. With the money. Connor's laugh held no humor. Turns out betrayal runs in the family. I moved closer, noting the packed bags by the door. Like father, like son. Speaking of sons. He slid one glass toward me. How's Mason's head? My fingers itched to grab the crystal tumbler and smash it into his perfect teeth. Instead, I pulled out my phone, playing the video Jenna had recorded last year, the accident at the bar. Connor's expression didn't change as he watched himself push the drunk customer down the stairs. Watched Jenna scream. Watched himself stage the scene. Insurance, he said simply. Like everything else. Including me. Especially you. He closed the diary. Though I have to admit, you surprised me. All these years, I thought you were just convenient. Movement in the hallway caught my eye, Peter's signal. Everything was in place. The property deeds, I said. They're worthless without my signature. About that. Connor's smile widened. Remember our anniversary trip to Vegas? That contract you signed while slightly intoxicated? My blood ran cold. You didn't. Power of attorney. Limited, but enough. He pulled out another document. Everything transfers tomorrow. The land, the development rights, all of it. There's just one problem. I finally picked up the whiskey glass. You're reading the wrong diary. The door burst open. Detective Morris entered, followed by Peter and, most surprisingly, Marcus. Hello, brother, Marcus said. Sorry about the money. Had to make it look good. Connor's composure cracked. What? I opened my grandmother's real diary to the last page. Remember when you asked about my grandfather? The one who disappeared before I was born. Understanding dawned in his eyes as he read the name, James Peterson. Your grandfather's identity, he whispered. The one I used for money laundering. Tax evasion. Murder. Morris stepped forward. We have it all, Mr. Walsh. Including your Vegas paperwork. Forgery's a serious charge. Connor lunged for the balcony. I moved without thinking, years of suppressed rage finding their target. The whiskey glass shattered against his temple. He stumbled, fell. That's for Mason, I said. Peter and Morris moved to restrain him, but Connor was laughing through the blood. You think this changes anything? He spat. You're still the grieving teacher. The convenient wife. The perfect victim. No. Jenna appeared in the doorway, holding a familiar bracelet. She's the woman who taught me to stop being afraid. The USB drives hidden in the bracelet's links contained everything, every transaction, every threat, every carefully orchestrated manipulation. Including his confession from moments ago. You recorded, Connor's mask finally shattered completely. Like you taught me, Jenna said. Insurance. Morris read him his rights while Peter checked his restraints. Through it all, Connor kept his eyes on me. I did love you, he said quietly. In my way. I know. I gathered the real diary, the evidence of his crimes. That's what makes this perfect. What does? Knowing that for 16 years, you thought you were destroying me. I moved to the door. When really, I was learning how to destroy you. Mom? Chloe waited in the hallway, Mason beside her. Both stronger than I'd ever been at their age. It's done, I said. Behind us, Connor called my name one last time. I didn't turn around. Some endings don't need an audience. In the elevator, Mason touched the fading cut above his eye. Was it worth it? I looked at my children, at Jenna, at the family we'd pieced together from broken trust and shared survival. Ask me tomorrow, I said. Because some victories take time to feel real. And some scars need to fade before you can see them as battle wounds rather than weaknesses. But tomorrow was finally ours to decide. The courthouse steps felt colder than they should in spring. I watched Connor being led away in handcuffs, his perfect posture finally broken. He didn't look back. Neither did I. Ready? Peter held out my grandmother's diary. Inside the courtroom, the evidence had spoken for itself. The USB drives, the financial records, the video confession. But it was the diary that had sealed everything, my grandfather's identity, the original property deeds, the truth Connor had tried to steal. Almost. I turned to face the gathered press. They wanted their story, the betrayed wife, the corrupt businessman, the perfect family shattered. But that wasn't my story to tell anymore. Jenna stepped forward, her scarred arm now worn like a badge. I'll handle the statements. You don't have to, I said. I do. She squared her shoulders. For both of us. Mason touched the fading cut above his eye. Can we go home now? Home. Not the house Connor had chosen, with its perfect lawn and carefully arranged furniture. Something new. Something ours. Actually, Chloe pulled out a set of keys, my grandmother's old house keys. I have an idea about that. The property stretched before us, acres of forest Connor had tried to steal. The old house stood exactly as I remembered, waiting. It needs work, Peter observed. Good. I watched Mason wander toward the creek where I'd played as a child. We need something to build. Mom? Chloe's voice was hesitant. There's something else you should know. She handed me her phone. On screen was a message from Connor's brother Marcus. The money he stole from you, I found it. All of it. What do you want to do? Peter asked. I looked at my children, at Jenna, at the home that had sheltered 3 generations of survivors. I want to build something he can't break. The contractor arrived that afternoon. As she surveyed the property, I opened the diary one last time. Past the deeds and documents, past the evidence that had destroyed Connor's empire, to a letter I'd never shown anyone. Not even in court. My dearest Addison, my grandmother's handwriting flowed across the page. By the time you read this, you'll understand why your grandfather disappeared. Why I had to protect what was ours. Sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when to fight back. Mom? Mason called from the creek. Look what I found. He held up a piece of sea glass, smoothed by water and time. Green, like his eyes. Like Connor's eyes. Keep it, I said. Some things are worth remembering. Even the bad stuff. Especially the bad stuff. I touched his healed cut. It shows us who we really are. Jenna joined us, her phone buzzing with interview requests. They want to know what happens next. Tell them the truth, Chloe said. Tell them we're building something. The contractor's estimate arrived, repairs, renovations, new beginnings. All funded by Connor's hidden accounts, now frozen and seized. Justice had a price tag, after all. There's one more thing, Peter said quietly. He handed me an envelope, divorce papers, already signed. Connor's final surrender. I didn't open them. Some endings don't need witnesses. Instead, I watched my family explore their new home. Mason by the creek, finding pieces of the past. Chloe on the porch, planning the future. Jenna with her camera, documenting everything Connor had failed to destroy. You know, Peter said, revenge usually leaves people empty. This isn't revenge. I picked up a piece of sea glass Mason had missed. This is reconstruction. The sun set behind the trees Connor had tried to sell, casting shadows that looked like possibilities. Tomorrow would bring contractors and questions, reporters and responsibilities. But tonight, in this moment, I held my grandmother's diary and my children's future in the same hands. And neither felt heavy anymore. Because sometimes the greatest victory isn't in destroying what hurt you. It's in building something so strong, so beautiful, that the hurt becomes just another layer in its foundation. And we were already building.